Hello again, friends! And you are our friends, and welcome back to another edition of Jim Cornette's Drive Thru right here at the end of August. I guess you'll be hearing this in September, but we're right back here with the usual shenanigans and laughter and songs, and just a freewheeling, fun-loving kind of show. It's almost like the hippie commune of wrestling podcasts. I'm your host, the great Brian Last, and here he is, the cackling master himself, Mr. Jim Cornette.
Well, the first time you tried it, you only got 3 words in, so that was a better one. But I thought instead of saying at the end of August, I thought you were just going to go ahead and say at the end of our rope. It's going to be it's going to be a laugh in. It's going to be a laugh in today type of program. Just anarchy, a corny and anarchy, and you never know what might happen. And which one of us gets to be Goldie Hawn?
Are you going to be Alan Suze or Joanne Worley? Which one do you think you'll be?
I'd rather be Alan Funt. Possibly Artie Johnson on the bench.
Ah, very good.
I'll probably spend a lot of my declining years sitting on a park bench in a raincoat. Sitting on a park bench.
To the point where you think Ruth Buzzy's attractive. No, I apologize to the family and friends of Ruth Buzzy. She's a very fine comedian.
It was a very she is. She's alive still. She's talented still alive. Individual.
Yes.
Sitting on a park bench, eyeing little girls with bad intent. Snot is dripping down his nose. Greasy fingers smear his shabby clothes. It's going to be that kind of show, huh?
And they say you're out of touch.
You know. I know what the kids are listening to these days. So, I mentioned that your chair is becoming famous. I'm surprised your chair doesn't have its own Twitter account already, but now that I've said that, it will soon. But Brian Last's squeaky chair I mentioned before we went on the air sounded like the bed springs in an 1890s whorehouse. Hopefully you can keep that to a minimum so we don't have any distractions. So we emit and record and broadcast the normal professional podcast that we normally do, where we talk about the bed springs and 1890s whorehouses and how Ruth Buzzy was as ugly as a mud fence.
How dare you?
I dare. I'm sorry to the family and friends of Ruth Buzzy.
A reminder, she's alive.
And huh?
A reminder, she's still alive.
What? No, you're shitting me.
No, I'm serious.
95?
She's probably not that old, but she's still alive.
Do you know for a factual matter that Ruth Buzzy, the actress comedian, is still alive?
I do, because I can't remember where I saw this. And I saw that she had like a big cameo following, maybe on CBS Sunday Morning or something. It was something I saw with her.
It was something I saw on Facebook now. Fake news.
I didn't say that.
Well, improve that Ruth Buzzy is still alive. Give me some documentation.
All right, let me go look as we continue what will be.
Are you going to Google on the Google machine?
I'm looking on the Google machine right now, what will most certainly be the lowest viewed YouTube video we put up.
Well,
Jim Cornette on Ruth Buzzy. But she's 85 years old, still alive.
Well, bless her little pea-picking heart then.
And you made her older. That's the last thing you ever do to a woman. Make her 10 years older than she is?
Okay, well, no, I just meant that she did a good job of makeup on the program.
Typical misogynist Jim Cornette.
I've never massaged Ruth Buzzy one single time in my life, I'll have you know, and I impugn your integrity for insinuating such a thing.
If you are a massage therapist, you're a masseuse.
Or a misogynist.
What do you call multiple? Is it masseusi?
Oh, you mean the plural of masseuse.
If they all get together.
They're masseuses.
Masseusi. The masseusi.
Well, maybe masseusai.
Masseusai.
I don't think it'd be masseusi. That'd just be silly.
All right, well, where were we going? We were going somewhere, and you dragged it back to Ruth Buzzy.
I went out in the world this past weekend, as I've mentioned on my show, The Experience, where we don't have to talk about Ruth Buzzy and her coochie and all that stuff.
No one was talking about that.
Didn't she do the hoochie coo? No, that was Charo.
You I've confused Charo with Ruth Buzzy?
I confused Charo and Ruth Buzzy just because of the hoochie coochie. Only one of them was married to the only other famous Cuban band leader besides Desi Arnaz Jr., which would have been Xavier Cugat. That was Charo, not Ruth Buzzy. I don't know whether Ruth Buzzy and Artie Johnson ever got together or not.
Do you know this episode of the Drive-Thru would have probably been the single biggest episode of any show ever if it came out in 1975?
Well, I was about to say, right now, we have got the fucking rest home demographic cinched up tight in an STF, baby. But anyway, back to the future, back to the present, or just 2 days ago, which is currently, right? I went out in the world. I told you about this on my program, that I was going to, Stacy's birthday was Sunday, and for the first time in 18 months, we're going to a restaurant. We're going to eat amongst the people. And it didn't go off without a hitch. I mentioned that I had Hotchkiss working with the city code officials, and I thought the plexiglass was going to be in, and you had to do certain permits with the, when you're constructing partitions to partition your area off from other people in a public business, you have to engage in certain permits, and there's some greasing of some palms that needs to go on. But everything was great until the problem was Hotchkiss was going to save some money and do it himself. The actual work of the installation of the plexiglass, we were going to do a cone of silence kind of thing that would just come straight down over our table and give us, room. And also there was the air filtration system, but everything came in. Hotchkiss was going to do the work himself because he's handy with the electric power drills and the bolt cutters and things. But
isn't he missing a finger?
No, he's got an extra one on his left hand, so he can do a variety of things. His dexterity is incredible. It's just he can't find gloves. But anyway, he was going to do the work himself. Now, don't scoff at the man's disability. Actually, it's not a disability. It doesn't hinder him. As a matter of fact, it helps him in certain cases.
He meets lots of women.
His girlfriend likes it.
Yeah, it's a great way to meet women. Look what I got.
Well, it's a conversation starter. But anyway, so he was going to do the work himself, but did I mention the restaurant was downtown? And it's downtown Louisville, and he's got the thing where basically for another 18 months, he's not allowed to be within a mile of the Jefferson County Courthouse. So they actually measured, they were out there measuring, held up traffic on 5th Street for a little while, but they measured the distance to the restaurant, and he couldn't go in. By then it was too late to get the Monroe brothers to come in. So we had to rough it, and we went with no plexiglass cone of silence and or health over the top of us. But as I also mentioned, we did do an early Sunday evening reservation where most people would not be out and about, and son of a gun, wouldn't you know what happened? Most people weren't out and about. As a matter of fact, we were there till about 6:30, and it's downtown Louisville on Sunday. So we figured out there's nobody out and about. So this was pretty fucking good. It's a Brazilian steakhouse. I can reveal that now since nobody will show up asking for a free meal because we're not there. And you could park in the garage, which was practically empty, and parking's free on Sunday because did I mention it's downtown Louisville, so who's going to be downtown on Sunday? And getting in the elevator, boom, by ourselves, it was almost like a private entrance. We walked straight through. It's on 4th Street Live, which on Sunday at 5 o'clock is apparently dead. It's the first time I've been there in 4 years. I don't fucking know. But anyway, and we walked right out, and boom, there's the fucking restaurant. Walked right in, sit right down, baby. Anyway, things are reminding me of music these days. And there's nobody, there's like 2 tables of people in the room over there, and we get over by the wall all by ourselves, and you wouldn't have believed the variety of meats that are going on in this place, Brian. But I will finish the health report before I comment on the food. So, of course, we've worn our masks in. We get the table, we take them off, because there's people at a table over about 30 feet from us, and over about 20 feet on the other side, right? So we're all good right here by the wall. And I'm thinking, Well, I see the person who seated us is wearing a mask, and I see people carrying the meat around that's wearing a mask. I'm thinking, okay, this makes sense because they're actually carrying the food that they're going to bring you. So, of course, they would be wearing a mask, right? And I'm saying they've got have you been to a Brazilian steakhouse? Not necessarily in Brazil, just anywhere.
I haven't.
They've got the gimmick where they bring you your sides and you can add, it's all you can eat, right? So, of course, I've got my money's worth. But they bring you your sides and you can ask for more. They bring those to the table, but they have this giant salad bar with the fresh vegetables and all a variety of stuff. And they've got shrimp and they've got holy mackerel. And I see there's one person up there wearing a mask. So I'm thinking, okay, well, this is what the policy is. When you go, this makes sense. Also, when you leave your table and go to the salad bar, you got to be wearing a mask. So as we start, then I start seeing some of the other staff coming out and they're not wearing a mask. Well, wait a minute. What sense does it make if some of the staff is wearing a mask and some is not wearing a mask? So now I'm confused. So I go up to the salad bar and here comes other people with no masks on. And now also remember the sneeze guard, right? They got a sneeze guard everywhere because they figured some human beings can't figure out not to just fucking haul off and chew in the ranch dressing. That's why they have a sneeze guard. But now that's just in regular days. But now we're in a pandemic of a contagious disease. And you're not supposed to wear a mask when you're standing over the fucking romaine lettuce. But they have plastic gloves for you to put on before you pick up the plate to get the stuff at the salad bar that nobody's wearing a mask at breathing on. So there's inconsistencies here. But anyway, I wasn't there for salad anyway, so I got one. I wasn't going back, and I scampered back over to the table and wolfed that son of a bitch down.
Now, can I stop you real quick before you talk about any more food?
Please do.
Everyone knows you love meat. Everyone knows you love a good cheeseburger. But we also know that you are right now at your lowest weight in your adult life. You're in great shape.
Well, you could have stopped with adult life.
For Jim Cornette.
Okay.
For Jim Cornette. You're in great shape.
For Jim Cornette.
That would most likely mean your stomach has shrunk a bit. Were you able to really enjoy a Brazilian steakhouse the way you would want to because of I'm assuming your smaller appetite?
Well, I trained for this. I had not eaten since about 6:30 p.m. the previous day.
Oh, wow.
And also I wasn't able to put up the numbers on the board that I would have 15 years ago when I was really heavily into aggravation eating, or I will choke a motherfucker, or in these fucking deals where I would have to go 36 hours with barely having a meal, like the time out I went to the Ring of Honor WrestleMania events in Phoenix, and I was there at the building for 12 hours on Saturday and get out and have fucking cold Burger King because that's what we found. And then the next day is the afternoon show, and I hadn't had time to eat anything, and I'm stuck at what I thought was going to be an arena and turned out to be an arena at a college. Means there's no fucking nothing. And after that let out, I had the quadruple bypass and those are half-pound patties each at Heart Attack Grill with the all-you-can-eat fries, along with half of Stacy's double that she couldn't finish, and I did that in like 12 minutes. But I digress. No, but I trained for this, and it was good. And here's the thing. The only time I've eaten, I like cooking at home. I like Stacy's cooking. I like my cooking. But I have always eaten other people's cooking more regularly. And I like other people's cooking, but not when it's been shoved in a goddamn plastic container and set in somebody's back seat for 20 minutes, which has been food delivery over the last year and a half. So I'm actually getting it from the source here. Yeah, I'm mowing through that stuff. And I'd already decided, right, with the whole COVID, I said, we're vaccinated. We haven't been to a restaurant. I'm reconciling this in my mind. We haven't been to a restaurant in 18 months. I've barely left the house in 18 months. You've traveled only when necessary. What are the chances, if you're just going by the odds, and we're there on Sunday and there's hardly anybody in the place, what are the chances that we're going to catch something? At this point, I would have had to have literally kicked Maria Ospinskaya in some kind of previous life to be cursed like that. Even a man who is pure in heart and worships his wrestling by night may catch the COVID when the wolfbane blooms and he's stupid enough to go to a restaurant for the first time in a year and a half. It would be ridiculous, right? So I'm feeling good about the whole thing. Even with the people I'm not understanding why there's no consistency with people that are breathing all over your fucking food wearing masks or not. But anyway, it was delicious, however. The garlic mashed potatoes were my favorite side. Stace went for obviously the more Brazilian traditional, I think, plantains and polenta and something or other else. I saw mashed potatoes and say, here.
You don't eat plantains?
I don't. I've never been on the plantation to know, to have homegrown plantains to where I would, adapt an affinity to them. But anyway, you ought to see this meat. They had sirloin. They had teriyaki chicken. They had bacon-wrapped filet mignons, just medallion-sized. Oh, my God. The incredible smoked sausage. Every kind of meat, and they just carve it right off and and you have your little tongs and you just pull it from them, right? So they don't touch anything, and they're just whacking it off with they whack the smoked sausage off just right with their knives and everything. But anyway, that was good. I can see possibly in another 3 to 6 months venturing out and doing something like that again.
That sounds exciting. Can't wait to hear more about it.
I had a big meal in public, if you will. And I still hear from these people who every time he talks about the COVID, you can't be scared to live your life. You have to go out and do what you would normally be doing and not put it over. And actually, I'm doing right now, except for the no restaurant part. I'm living my life. It was a pain in my ass every time I had to fucking leave the house to begin with beforehand. So this is actually living my stress-free life. You know this to be a fact.
Yeah, pandemic or no pandemic, none of us were going to Sturgis.
Yeah, it's like I don't know right now if there was no pandemic, what would be attractive enough, and you've just got a brand new trip to Swaziland. I don't know what the fuck that it would make me want to leave my home right now. So actually, the only time that I'm not living my dream life is when I have to go to my dry cleaners went out of business. I found that out.
Because you stopped going there.
They were just there a year and a half ago.
It's the same thing that happened to the photo booth when you went into managing.
Yes, the Full Tone Photo Company took a nosedive. No, I wasn't really keeping them in business at this point. They were just right there. Just as I said, a year and a half ago, I realized it's been a year and a half since I wore dress clothes and needed to have anything dry cleaned. And it's only down the road. I went by there. They pulled the sign off the front of the building. There were wires hanging in that room. Everything left. Thankfully, I'd picked up all my clothing. Well, there you go.
Well, another episode of the Drive Thru here, and
have I mentioned? What day does this come out? We're still almost on a regular schedule, but not quite. We're doing this one day late, right? And then we're going to be caught up
almost
from heretofore.
I think by the end of September, because we still have the Jewish holidays, we still have the Jim Cornette holidays.
Wait a minute, I thought you said the end of September is a rib the other day.
Well, we have to get through the Jewish holidays. We have to get through your birthday. We have to get through several things.
Wait a minute, what day is my birthday on?
Your birthday's on, I think, the 17th, isn't it?
Well, no,
shouldn't you know this? It's your birthday.
Damn it,
What's wrong with you?
What day of the week? Now, fuck you, first of all, in your sphincter. I'm saying to you, the words that are coming out of my mouth is what day of the week is my birthday on this month. I know it's the 17th. It's been that way for quite some time now.
It is this year a Friday.
Oh, God damn it. Well, we ain't going to record the experience on my birthday, are we?
You see?
What are these Jewish holidays you're springing on me now?
Hold on. Let me give you the actual dates. Of course, we begin with Rosh Hashanah. And Rosh Hashanah is on Monday the 6th at the evening, so we're good for recording Monday during the day.
Well, there's a hip, hip, hooray. Holy
it doesn't
mackerel.
appear that Rosh Hashanah will mess up our schedule too much. We want to thank the Lord for that. Good job this year with the calendar, big man.
Big man, thumbs up on the calendar, but Cornette's birthday. Who do I get upset about for that?
And Yom Kippur, I'm off the grid from sundown Wednesday to sundown Thursday, so that doesn't affect us either. We're in good. It's really you. It's you and your birthday that's messing everything up.
It's all my fault.
Yeah.
It's every single bit of it now. Well, we'll be mostly on a proper schedule except for that weekend of September 17th, which is my 60th birthday, and I will be accepting all types of gifts and cards and well wishes at P.O. Box 436963, Louisville, Kentucky 40253. But speaking of which, before we even get there, we ain't even going to get to my birthday, baby. Before we talk about the psychedelic grand opening of the all-new JimCornette.com, which takes place this weekend. That's where I was going with that, was what day does this show come out? It's this weekend.
September 1st, the show comes out.
Okay, September 4th, Saturday morning at 10 o'clock Eastern Time. We've been talking about this. I've been talking about it. The world is talking about it. The new JimCornette.com, the whole new website, the brand new Cornette's Collectibles store, the ease of the shopping experience. We now take PayPal and major credit cards. You get your confirmation emails from this thing. It's going to be incredible. An all new design, the whole 9 yards. Hotchkiss Featherbottom has worked his fingers to the bone to do this, and he has told everybody in the world that he triple dogs dares you. You people don't have a hair on your testicles if you do not get on and try to crash this thing, because he's got all the server that we need. He's got servers hooked up to servers to handle this traffic. And so even if you don't want to purchase anything, get on JimCornette.com at 10 a.m. Saturday, September the 4th, Eastern Time, by the way, and just and look around. Just take it for a test drive. Click on all the buttons. You can go to the Patreon. You can go to the YouTube. You can go to all of the stuff that we do and the collectible store. If you do have an extra dollar and the pent-up demand has been too much for you, that we've only been open 16 days in calendar 2021, that's because we were waiting on this site that works right. And we've done the inventory. We've got about 275 of the original action figures, the red and yellows, and then they're gone forever. We're not doing those anymore. And we've got somewhere around, I got a few extra boxes of the variant from the toy company. So we probably got around 850 or so of those. And then those will not be done anymore. Or the Cult of Cornette membership certificates. You can purchase those. The T-shirts that people have been browbeating me about in constant emails. Yes, you can have official Jim Cornette T-shirts. And the Behind the Curtain graphic novel that is sold out, I believe, everywhere in the world except from Cornette's Collectibles. Well, I got them, and now you can have them. And all of that, as we mentioned, Brian, is going to be open from the 4th to the 11th of September, 1 week, because I have a feeling history has shown, I've got a premonition of this, that I'm going to get slammed again, and I want to make sure that we get everything out. So we're going to keep it open for a week. Then we're going to shut the store down. The website will still be up. You can see all the other beautiful stuff. And then I'm going to fill that, and I'll evaluate everything. I'll keep everybody posted on the podcast. But if you want to be guaranteed of getting something of mine on sale, even for Christmas at this point, buy it between the 4th and the 11th of September. Just guarantee yourself. And somebody said, well, you asshole, talking to me. How dare they talk to me in that manner? Said, you asshole, you mean to tell me that you can't be bothered to get shit out in 4 months before Christmas? No, they misapprehended the words what come out of my mouth. By the time I put this stuff on sale, and because as we all know, I process these by hand, they're all legitimate, personalized autographs delivered with loving care by the United States Postal Service through me. By the time that I get that done, I also have kind of enjoyed over the past few months, especially having time to address personal things in my life, like taking a shit and sleeping and eating maybe more than once a day. And my holidays, I want to try to be a little bit more peaceful. So I'm not sure how much more time I'm going to have toward the end of the year to devote to opening up, getting slammed, and spending 6 weeks and getting dug out again. Did I convey that properly, Brian?
I believe so.
But hey, here's another thing. When you buy the Stones CDs, Mick's not signing it and putting it in the envelope for you. So give me a break. I'm only one old fucking man.
No, Mick is one old fucking man because he's literally just fucking. He still is having kids.
Oh, my God. Well, and poor Charlie Watts. We didn't mention this.
No, we did. You accused him of being in the expensive winos, I believe.
No, but we didn't talk about him being dead. He just died, didn't he?
He just died. It's pretty sad.
Well, yes. So that's what I mean. Poor Charlie Watts. He certainly wasn't poor before he was dead. Now he's not so well off. But he was a very distinguished man.
That's right.
Where were we going with that? Oh, yeah, well, Mick's even older than I am. That's why Mick's not mailing his fucking CDs out anymore, because he's too old for that. Well, I'm still chipper for another little while, so get them while you can.
One executive that I knew, and I won't use his name because he's still out there, and yeah, I don't want to hurt this guy's career, but he would always say, I mean, this was like every single time, and I was around him a lot, and any conversation he had with someone, he would always make sure to say, in talking about his dealings with Mick Jagger, and everyone knew he had dealings with Mick Jagger, so it wasn't a secret. So you think, oh, we're going to get a story. And he would always just go, he is such an ugly man. When you're up close to him, he's terribly ugly. He's really he's a very ugly man.
He'll probably have some more ugly children.
Yeah, this guy's having just sex all over the place, and he weighs 80 pounds or whatever, but yeah, this guy who's done a lot of work with the Rolling Stones just always pointed out how ugly Mick was in person.
Well, you know, he does. I mean, he's not classically handsome. It was the rock star appeal from the beginning. Because if he'd have just been a fucking bricklayer, he couldn't have got laid in a whorehouse with a fistful of 50s. Even when he was 25 years old.
And he wouldn't have had a fistful of 50s because he would have spent it on Elmore James records.
Well, there you have. Well, you know him. Now, wait a minute. You're accusing Mick Jagger of frittering away his money on frivolity?
I am a big Rolling Stones fan, and I think based on my knowledge of the Rolling Stones, especially the early years of the Stones and the pre-Stones Mick Jagger, that Mick Jagger, if he hadn't made it, first of all, he wouldn't have been a bricklayer. He probably would have been an accountant or something because he was going to school for finance. And how did him and Keith Richards reunite? They bumped into each other on their subway platform with records. It's all about music. So I think he would have been spending his money at that point in his life on music and then going to school to learn how to spend other people's money.
All right. Well, I don't know who to believe about Mick. You or Marianne Faithfull. You're both such fountains of information.
Well, she became a raging heroin addict. And I've been fairly lucid. You know?
It may have impaired her memory.
Yes. Did you ever hear that album? What was I should know this off the top of my head, and I hadn't thought about it in years. Remember Marianne Faithfull had that comeback album in, what was it, 79?
Oh, yes. Broken something, Blossom something.
Broken English. That's what it is.
Broken English.
Because I have it. I was thinking of the blue album cover. I have it here somewhere. And it's just the filthiest record because you haven't heard her in years. It's not, I sit and watch as it's none of that. It's just like, he was fucking me in my pussy. It's just every
Wait. Oh, hold on. Hold on, I dare you.
What?
I double dog dare you to prove this now. Go to the lyrics on the Google machine and tell me that Marianne Faithfull was singing he was fucking my pussy.
It was something, I'm paraphrasing.
That doe-eyed, no, you're paraphrasing now. See,
paraphrasing.
Doe-eyed, innocent little English flower. She was like that promo I did about Diana, the British Bulldog's wife that time, this delicate blossom of womanhood. You've accused her of being a filthy, potty-mouthed hoe.
I'm going to get back to this in a second, but you just reminded me of one of the greatest moments I never got to see in wrestling, but I've heard about it from other people, and Dave Prazak was there, and he told me everything. When Princess Diana died, everyone was upset. I mean, it was just such a stunning thing. To the point where at one of Ian Rotten's IWA shows, they had a moment of silence. And those fans, they honored the moment of silence because it's Princess Diana. Dennis was backstage with a mic because he's the heel. You know, the NWA was the NWA.
Dennis Corluzzo.
Dennis Corluzzo. As the moment of silence is coming to an end, Dave Prazak swears on the mic you just hear, "Yo, fuck that bitch." And he gets in the ring and he says, if she wasn't giving head in the back seat, she would have been alive. And just total heel shit and over the top. But here's Marianne Faithfull.
Somebody's going to say, how long is it? 24 years. Somebody's going to say it's been too soon. But go ahead.
I'm looking for the lyrics. This is the lyrics for the song Broken English, but these are not the lyrics I'm thinking of. What was the song? There was one song on that album that was just filthy.
Just filthy. Well, what are the titles on the album?
Well, hold on. I got to find the album. And ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens when we don't feel like going to the questions for a while.
Yeah, well, it's also when we have no format or plan of attack.
The songs are Broken. This is the song right here. I found it. Why Did You Do It is the name of the song.
Why did you do it?
Lyrics. When I stole a twig from our little nest and gave it to a bird with nothing in her beak, I had my balls and my brains put into a vice and twisted around for a whole fucking week. This is Marianne Faithfull.
Wait a minute, she just said she had balls?
She just said her balls were in a vice, twisted for a whole fucking week. Why'd you do it, she said. Why'd you let that trash get a hold of your cock? Get stoned on my hash? Why'd you do it, she said. Why'd you let her suck your cock? Oh, do me a favor. Doesn't put me in the dark. Why'd you do it, she said. They're all mine. Or excuse me, they're mine. All your jewels. You just tied me to the mast of the ship of fools, and it goes on right way. Here's another one. Why'd you do it, she said. Why'd you spit on my snatch?
She clearly seemed to be trying to work something out.
Yes, he went a long way from being discovered by Andrew Luke Oldham here, the pure princess.
Yeah, okay. Is there any way, can any of our musical geniuses put the words to that song to the tune of As Tears Go By?
No way. No way. There's no way. That's a challenge I want someone to try to
Why did you spit upon my snatch?
Big gray mother, I love you forever. With your barbed wire pussy and your good and bad weather. I feel like Enzo wrote this.
Enzo Faithfull. That's his new gimmick. What did this Rolling Stones do to this poor girl?
Oh, here's a good one. This actually, I mean, it's a great lyric, despite the fact that it's right out of the pages of Screw Magazine. Why'd you do it, she screamed, after all that we said? Every time I see your dick, I see her cunt in my bed.
What? Oh,
Jesus.
Where is Marianne Faithfull these days?
I think she's cleaned up now. You know, she's one of those artists now that people, like musicians, will seek her out. People started like saying, oh, we need to reevaluate her work, and other contemporary musicians start bringing her around. She starts doing some stuff again, and she was never a real artist at the beginning, and she kind of became one at the end.
Well, I don't know if I might study her work. I don't know if I'd seek her out or bring her around. She sounds like she's really fun at parties.
You got to hear her voice now. That's the other thing. She used to sound like Marianne Faithfull. Now she sounds like Keith Richards. She sounds like Keith.
She sounds like one of the fun girls from Mount Pilot. See, now we're going back to the laugh-in era.
Hey, you bet your sweet bippy.
All righty. Don't make me spit. Don't make me spit on your snatch, Brian. This is your program here.
I'll drink to that.
Oh, God. Should we, I sound like Lance Russell now. Should we talk about the shoot?
Russell and Martin's laughing. Now, that's the show we never got.
Wait a minute. No, hold on. Russell and Brown's laugh-in. Can you imagine Lance Russell and Dave Brown as the hosts of laugh-in? Maybe not. I don't know.
Well,
maybe we gave Travis something there, but I don't think we're gonna be able to get much out of it.
I don't think we gave him too much. The fickle finger of fate is pointing in another direction right now, and I will say, Jim, there is a popular topic that a lot of people are talking about this morning, and this is one of those casualties of you and I both completely dismissing Raw and never watching it. We have to play catch up now. But apparently there was a match, and I'm just seeing clips of it now. Charlotte Flair versus Nia Jax. I believe Charlotte was the women's champion coming out of the pay-per-view we reviewed. And without knowing too much about it and haven't really watched it too much, people were sending in comments thinking it was a shoot. Have you seen this at all?
Well, no, here's what we're going to do, because my Twitter was inundated when I got up this morning with people, Charlotte and Nia Jax shoot fight on Raw, or shoot ? Or the word shoot was being bandied about. And the clips that I'm not going to go into too much detail at the head of this thing, because we're going to dissect this in intricate detail, but the clips that I saw, I'm fucking dying, because no, they didn't have a shoot. What they had was an old-fashioned four-finger stinker. And it's that I guess a lot of people have romanticized the idea of shooting, and we've talked about this before, but we got so many new listeners. Shooting, or did it turn into a shoot, or I'm shooting when I'm telling the truth, or they don't know that there are degrees of shoot, or friendly shoots, or stages, or just lack of cooperation, or just lack of coordination, or just there are a number of stages of something breaking down without it being a shoot. But from the clips that I saw, I don't know that many have ever happened in the same match or not. I've said this before. Nia Jax is the Plowboy Frazier of women pro wrestlers. There was only one. Plowboy was around for years and years, and he made some money in places, or drew some money play. He had a spot in the WWF, but I only saw him have good matches with one human being ever in the history of wrestling, and that was Lawler, because he was the magician and he had the key to unlock every door. But otherwise, short of them booking her against Jerry Lawler, which I'm sure the King would probably refuse that particular assignment, I don't know. I can't explain how she has managed to persevere this long on that roster when other people have come and gone and been asked to leave. Can you?
Who's her cousin?
Well, I mean, at some point, we had a few fucking ancillary members of the Samoan family, I think, at one time or another in various training programs, and they didn't all make it. But
and that's before any of them started making big motion pictures.
Well, that's true.
And she's not just a member of the Samoan family, it's Dwayne Johnson.
Well, that's true also. God, I mean, at this point, should The Rock stage an intervention? Nia, whatever the cuz, whatever, they
just signed another fat too. Did you see that?
Well, I mean, there's a bunch of Fatus that are a lot better workers than Nia Jax, so I'm not against signing a Fatu.
No, I'm just saying they didn't sign Jacob Fatu. It was a different. I'm just the one guy out there. But anyway, I'm not going to go.
All right, well, we're going to be going in a different direction. But I asked you, and I saw a clip, two clips, a shorter one and a longer one on Twitter, and you got a clip of this match because I hipped you to it. Or pipped you to it, or peeped you to it, or how do the kids say it? I told you about it.
Or that, yes.
Yeah. And so we neither one have seen this thing in its entirety, but we thought for the people, it might be an idea if we watched this and reacted in live real time to seeing the entire thing in context developing in full. Because as I mentioned before, I think it's only natural to bring up a classic Ghost of Mr. Chicken quote, the horribleness and awfulness of this may never be forgotten.
Well, it may not be forgotten because I was shocked to see, people started sending me images, but I hadn't watched it. I didn't realize it would be 12 minutes. How does it go for that long? Jeez.
Well, no, this got to be entrances too, right? So
I don't know.
Well, we're going to find out on this thing because it could be even more rotten than we imagine, but we're going to talk about the rottenness of it, and then we're going to, as we watch it unfold in front of our eyes, I've got my bleach right here standing by in the bottle, and then we're also afterwards, we're going to talk about the implications, possibly, of this, and or why the fuck would they do this? That type of thing. We're going to flesh it out with panel discussion with you and me after we watch this thing, right?
Right, the same panel that's been here for the entire run of the show. Yes.
We're going to have a panel discussion, you and me.
Okay.
If the other people on the panel just shut up, we'll have a real nice discussion between ourselves. That's what we ought to do sometime. We ought to just announce we've got a panel show, and top of every show, I introduce you and you introduce me, and then we both introduce 2 or 3 other guests, but they're not there, and then we just do the show and nobody else ever speaks.
Can we advertise that, this week's panel includes, Jim Cornette, Barack Obama, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Well, we could just do it like prospective guests. Barack Obama, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Charles Manson, whatever, then introduce them, but they just don't have anything to add to the conversation, and they never speak. It's something we might get back to with each other.
What if you take one celebrity who doesn't like wrestling and you put him with one random wrestler that you pick?
Well, but then we've actually got to do it.
That is a good show, actually.
Well, yeah, but I'm just trying to jack off here now. Are we going to get back to this Nia Jax and Charlotte Abominathan?
Well, I can tell you I won't be jacking off to this match.
Even if you're in San Diego.
Even if I'm in San Diego. But we have this, and again, you don't want to watch the 3-minute version? You want to watch this whole thing?
No, we got to watch this whole thing in context and see what's going on here, and so we can report to the people. And now, we're not encouraging you to watch this. We're just going to give you our impressions from seeing this together, Brian and I, for the very first time. You don't need to seek it out. We'll probably give you a good idea. But if you want it by our description, you want to watch it. It was on Raw on August the 30th.
The 30th, yes.
A day that will live in infamy.
All right. Well, if you want to do it, we have a link here that is approximately 12 minutes. We're going to, not a traditional watch along. We're actually watching it for the first time in real time.
Yes. And we don't care whether anybody syncs this up or not, because it's not worth that, but it might be worth a tickle.
Well, Jim, as we said before, we have this entire video here, apparently 12 minutes. We have it queued up so we can watch.
And this is 12 minutes from the opening bell, too, now we have confirmed. So this could be interesting.
This certainly could be, and we're going to press play. Of course, this is not the traditional watch-along. You can find it. You can do it, whatever you want.
Just imagine it in your minds, ladies and gentlemen.
That's right. But, Jim, if you're ready, let's press play on 3, and then I'll say press play now, and then you press play.
I know. I remember how you did. Damn it. Just do it.
1, 2, 3, press play now.
Boom. All right, and Nia Jax charges at Charlotte. Charlotte bails to the floor and gives her a whoo. Nothing out of the way so far.
No, looks like a traditional beginning of a wrestling match. Charlotte acting like a heel.
I'm wondering if maybe they've made some kind of agreement. They're going to try out their Brazilian jiu-jitsu tactics. No, Nia runs for her again. Charlotte bails out again.
I don't know what Nia was grabbing for there.
Well, she was trying to grab and hold up at the same time. And we have not seen a lot of manual dexterity in the past from Miss Jax.
No, manual dexterity is not frequently spoken of.
And right now in that outfit that's mostly black leather, she's got lightning bugs circling around her. She's so big.
Now, there is a little bit of mouthing off. I mean, we don't know what they're saying. It could be just working.
No, they're it's a match. There's a lockup. They're trash talking and a lockup. And Charlotte's trying, but obviously Nia Jax standing her ground because she's as big as a refrigerator. And now she backs Charlotte to the ropes. Nice lockup. Continuing the lockup. Apparently, somebody was trying to say something that somebody wasn't hearing. Charlotte just yanked her hair, and she swatted at Charlotte. Are they a shoulder tackle that doesn't work and some mean faces and trash talking? Try again with a shoulder. But Charlotte goes the kick to the leg. She's going to work the leg because she's a Flair. Charlotte hooks her for what looks like a vertical suplex, but obviously that's not going to work. I would imagine Nia Jax would reverse that. They're both jockeying for position, and they're both hammering each other in the midsection. Charlotte spins out, and Nia Jax gives her a headbutt. So far, this is one of those bowling shoe matches. Are they potentially working that there's no cooperation? What do you think, Brian?
I think that is certainly potentially what's happening here. It doesn't look like an outright shoot. I've seen a couple times where very quickly in the ring it's turned into one. This doesn't look like it so far.
We're trying to figure out whether this is the match that they've planned in the back and they're disagreeing on what came next at one point. And there's a big splash in the corner by Nia? Nia. I never remember. Nia Jax. And now she's wiggling and slapping her butt. I guess that's she's going to boom, run into the corner, but Charlotte slips out and gives her the boots to the stomach that she's covering up for. But not covering up like they're real, covering up like she doesn't know how to work.
She doesn't know how to sell either. Look at that.
And Charlotte's got a headlock, and Charlotte is trying to go down to a knee and ground her because it looks like that they need a conference. And she's jerking Nia Jax into position so that some information can be imparted one way or the other. It looks like Charlotte's trying to impart it. Nia Jax tries to shoot her off. Charlotte holds on to the headlock. Perhaps they haven't agreed on the last phases of the spot yet. So now Nia Jax going to shoot her off again, and now she goes. And a tackle, and Charlotte goes down. Sells her head. So it took Nia Jax that long to get one tackle. Oh, my God.
Now I see why it was 12 minutes.
And now Nia Jax hammers her and shoves her around, is getting some heat on her, and wants her to go down apparently face first, but I don't know what that movement was. It's like Nia Jax is trying to throw people around, but she doesn't know how to grab them and let them go. She shoves them in a direction that they don't know what the fuck's going on. Charlotte fighting back with back elbows. Nia misses the rush in the corner. And Charlotte tries to shoot her off and is supposed to get reversed, and Nia picks it up on it finally, so Charlotte can do her upside down, block a thing, grab Nia while she's standing over the ropes, and bend Nia Jax back over the ropes in a reverse front face lock.
That looks pretty cool.
That is cool. This is the match they've called. It's just Charlotte apparently is having to call it again as they go, and like on that reversal, she had to start reversing herself before Jax picked up on it. But now Charlotte's getting some fucking heat on. Is Nia Jax supposed to be a babyface?
That's what I was thinking before when I said Charlotte's the heel. She's acting like a heel at the beginning. Does that mean Nia's the babyface? I assume, although watching this on mute, she's certainly not acting like a babyface.
Well, and also she's twice as big. Charlotte jumps up on Nia Jax's back and gets a chin lock on her. And she's giving her the shoulder ride. So I guess Nia Jax can mare her over as she just did. So Charlotte fed her that. This is just an ugly fucking match. This is not. And Nia Jax just gave her a spine buster that she didn't really want to take.
That was the worst spine buster ever.
Well, yeah, that she put her foot down beforehand, and now Charlotte's rolled out. Because she didn't.
Yeah, let's replay that. Why'd you replay that spine buster? Jesus.
But I got to admit, having a match, and now Charlotte's bailed out on the floor and she's walking around and she's taking her time, and I see why. Having a match with somebody like this is trying to do wrestling moves to a couch. They're so big, you can't do anything with them if they're not fluid enough to go with it or to there. Oh, now Charlotte pulled the rope down, kind of, so Nia Jax could go out through the ropes. Charlotte dives over the top, cross body, onto Nia Jax goes down. Maybe they've captured a bit of it here. Now, that's not so bad. And they went to a break.
And just so you know, this is Oklahoma City.
Oh, boy. And the people are sitting on their hands. They went to a break. Oh, my God. When they came back, they went to the break on the only good move I've seen, the crossbody over the top. When they come back, Nia Jax just picked Charlotte up. Instead of a belly-to-back suplex, just picked her up and dropped her backwards, which was reckless, but I don't know if she knows how to do it any other way. And Nia Jax with kind of shitty forearms, and she's smiling, and she charges, and Charlotte moves Nia Jax's shoulder into the post. And she, like a harpooned whale, blubbers back into the ring.
Once again, working. They're working the whole time.
They're working, just not well. I mean, Nia Jax is not working very well, and neither one of them's working very well with each other. Charlotte's trying. Charlotte is climbing up. Is she going to go for a moonsault? She's on the top rope. And she moonsaults, and Nia Jax barely got knees up, so Charlotte sold it because it was kind of close. And Nia Jax, oh my God, picked her up and gave her the sloppiest Samoan drop right on her left shoulder that I've ever seen. And Nia Jax goes for the big leg drop, and Charlotte, thank God, gets out of the way, and a big boot to the face, which was safe. And she was trying to go for a cover, but Nia Jax beat her to her feet. And she was trying to tell her something and said, oh, fuck it, and just stood up and smacked her in the face. And Nia says, you smacked me in the face? And now they're pissed. And Nia grabs Charlotte's hair, and Charlotte bows up at her. And she's like, okay, are we going to fucking do this now? And boom, and now they're no, they're not fighting, but they're just pissed at each other. And now
they're fighting. It's not a hardcore fight, but they're fighting for a moment.
Yeah, they're pissed. Nia went for to pick her up for the deal, but Charlotte didn't want to go. So then Charlotte hit the ropes and went up for her own she's trying to get on Nia's shoulders, and Nia don't know how to fucking get her back, and they don't know what the fuck they're doing.
It's all falling apart now.
And now it's completely fallen apart. This makes Charlotte Flair's dad and JYD looked like Charlotte Flair's dad and Steamboat. And Charlotte went for a cover, and Nia Jax kicked out because now they've realized they've lost control of this whole match. They got pissed off and smacked each other a couple times to wake each other up, supposedly, because I'm sure Nia Jax doesn't believe she's to blame. And now they're going back to the match, which already sucks, and they've still got to fucking get this finish in, whatever it may be. And now they're just mulling all that over in their heads because they haven't touched in 45 seconds. And now they get back up. And Charlotte goes for the chop block because Nia was standing there waiting on it. And now Charlotte's trying to work on the fucking leg doing the God damn, it's like doing wrestling moves to a fucking waterbed. And so Charlotte tries the ground and pound. And she just half-heartedly kicks the leg. She's like, what else can I do to this fucking giant tree trunk leg on this immobile fucking opponent that has already fucked this fucking thing up royally?
She's right now trying to remember Tony Khan's phone number.
Yes, and now she yanked the leg, and she shoves the Nia Jax in the back of the head a couple times. And now she wiggles her butt and slaps her butt like Nia was doing earlier, Nia. Oh, but she goes for the figure 4 step over. She gets kicked off. Charlotte does into the buckle. And now Nia Jax is up and kind of limping on the leg that they've been working on. And the referee just touched his fucking hip, which where his IFB control is. And he said, okay, you guys can go anytime.
And the fans haven't moved.
And the fans are encased in, what did they encase the villains in when they sent them to the Phantom Zone? And Nia Jax, boom, picks her up, kind of a half choke slam. Oh my God. And pinned her. It was like a half choke slam, half power bomb. And Nia Jax pinned Charlotte 1, 2, 3 and got up and walked off. And she knows that she just laid a turd on national television. And Charlotte's still laying there because she wants to be dead. She is probably dying of mortified embarrassment. And now they replay the kickoff into the turnbuckle. And they replay the half power bomb, half choke slam that she just smacked her with. That may have been what she was trying to go for before, and it wasn't time yet, and Charlotte was trying to get out of it or something. I don't fucking know. That's the worst match I've ever seen.
Poor Charlotte.
It was twice as long as Linda Miles' match on OVW television, and this was on national TV.
And none of this is Charlotte's fault. You can't watch this and say any of this is Charlotte's fault.
What the fuck was the thought? If that had gone according to plan, what the fuck the thought was of that finish? All right, we've seen it all now. And I mean literally. Oh, let me get the taste out of my mouth on that. Holy Jesus Christ.
And you know what? We've been talking about it, Jim, recently. Andrade, AEW. Flair, we all assume, will be in AEW. Ric Flair, I should specify.
Yeah.
And
well, you don't need to specify too much anymore.
And look at what they've done with Charlotte since that time. I told you the day after the pay-per-view, they had her and Alexa Bliss a confrontation. I was like, oh no, don't do this. No, don't worry, it got worse. Her and Nia Jax. Because if she pinned Charlotte, this isn't over. This is a program. If she pinned her, there's going to be a rematch. There's going to be something. I don't know when their next pay-per-view is. We're going to see this again. You're doing everything you can to push Charlotte. Maybe I should just start saying Ashley Flair to AEW. Yeah. And it's going to happen.
Let's examine this for a second. Obviously, they know that Nia Jax is not that good and has no business going 12 minutes on TV with anybody. And maybe it wasn't supposed to go 12. Maybe they fucked up so much there in the middle that they were trying to get back to where they were supposed to be, and they took a couple of extra minutes. But even yet, in what rational world do you beat Charlotte Flair on free television with Nia Jax?
Clean.
Boom. And especially when, as you just mentioned, the rest of her family is already located on the other channel. Unless you're saying, hey, go join the rest of the family. That has to be the message here at this point. That is just completely insane. And no, that match wasn't a shoot. That match was a mess. That they were trying to cooperate, and it was that bad. And obviously, since we've seldom seen Nia Jax have a good one and seldom seen Charlotte Flair have a bad one, we know whose fault it was, but they were trying to cooperate until finally, then they lost complete they got frustrated and lost complete fucking cooperation with each other and got pissed and pie-faced each other a few times on television. And then we're basically like, well, we can't fucking do this. But Nia Jax was not going to back down, so she obviously didn't realize that she was fucking the whole thing up. I don't know what Charlotte was telling her in those conferences they were having, because it don't take that long to call one tackle. But good Lord have mercy on us all. That was awful, but it wasn't a shoot. It was a lack of coordination. for about 15 seconds, a lack of cooperation, then an attempt to get back in the fucking swing of things, and Jax was in the fucking complete weeds.
You have someone who's less qualified than almost every other woman on the main roster, someone who's been there for longer than a lot of the other women on the main roster, someone who the fans don't seem to care about one way or the other. All these cuts justify Nia Jax still being there. And problems in the past. How many wrestlers have been hurt in a ring with Nia Jax? We've talked about this. This isn't the first time we've talked about some sort of incident. Is it a shoot? Is it sloppiness? It's been multiple times. Maybe this is our next omnibus. The Nia Jax omnibus. But why would Nia Jax still have a job other than her family based on every single thing she has shown on national television for the past several years?
Well, maybe she's the one that got baby dolls envelopes of pictures that she was going to blackmail Dusty Rhodes with on TBS in 1988. I have no earthly idea.
Who's she going to blackmail?
God, the viewers.
Yeah.
But that, and see, that's the problem, is that she's so big that even the girls that know how, you can't. That's why in OVW, just as an example, or in some cases in training seminars that I've been involved with, you put some of the larger girls in the ring with the guys at first because the guys are big enough to move them around where they need to be, and it helps them understand and get the flow of things. Does that make any sense?
It makes lots of sense.
Okay, well, there's few guys that would be big enough to move Nia Jax around where she need to go to learn her the flow of things, because she has no flow whatsoever of her movement. It's all power and. But that's also why sometimes some of the girls the bigger girls would look better, Chyna, Linda Miles, against guys than girls, because they never really got smooth and the guys were big enough to move them around. But again, I've told that story before with Ernie Ladd and Hogan. It was Dr. Death, Steve Williams, before he switched heel, when he was still a babyface. We first got there. Doc only been in the business like a year and a half, and part of that at start wasn't all full time. So anyway, it's Ernie and God dang it, Ernie and Hercules Hernandez maybe against Dr. Death, and maybe it was Doug and somebody, I don't know. But I'm managing Ernie because I'm with Herc, and Doc was a lot of the guys, especially the bigger guys, the stronger guys, when they first get into business and they're green, and they, especially if they've been in football or in collegiate wrestling or in some type of competitive sports, that they're not used to working and they're not used to going with the flow and they're not used to lightening up on grips. All of that thing is counterintuitive. So when they first start, they're stiff. And if they're big, and football players, they're hard to move around. And you get tired of being jerked back and forth. And there was an element of Leon. That's why Shawn Michaels didn't like Vader, because he would jerk you around. And also, in some cases, even if the heel is calling the match and the babyface is the green one that's being herky-jerky and he's excited and he's not wanting to slow down, he's laying hands on you, he's wanting to do shit. Even if he's listening to what you're telling him to do, he's still manhandling you while he's listening. And sometimes you got to just fucking calm the motherfucker down. And Ernie Ladd grabbed Dr. Death and just swung him around in the corner, leaning back against the turnbuckles, and turned his back to Doc and put his right hand on the fucking top rope and his left hand on the top rope, and had his back and his ass right in Dr. Death's face and stomach. And Ernie was 6'9", and at that point he was ready to retire. He was 340 maybe. And his hands were catcher's mitts, and his feet were size 18. And even though Dr. Death was 300 pounds, you couldn't see him. He was behind, and Ernie just leaned his head over and said, "We're going to stay here until you calm down and start to listen." And you slowly saw the fucking herking and the jerking and the fucking movement stop, and Doc just, "Oh, okay, sorry, Ernie." now. And he grabbed him and pulled him back out, and they did something. But there's no way to do that with any of these girls. With Nia Jax, she's so big and she's so immobile and she's so awkward.
She's never gotten better. She's been there for years.
No, but it's like doing wrestling moves to a couch. You can drop elbows and shit on it, but trying to get it to cooperate, regardless of whether you know what you're doing or not, it ain't going to look good. But again, just go ahead and tell her, you know what? Fuck you then. The rest of your family's down there, go ahead and go. Don't fucking just beat her into powder. That's probably what they're going to do. I don't know how much longer her contract has. Is this the start now of beating her into powder because she's made it known, or they believe that she's headed out the door anyway?
Any way you look at it, that's counterproductive to her, to them, and anyone who's thinking about WWE or AEW, and then they see that, you're driving them away. Because you know what the truth of the matter is, if you look at the new protocol for what they're saying publicly about the Performance Center and who they're going to be recruiting for it, it's more Nia Jax than it is anyone who actually has any wrestling talent. You're going to get more Nia Jaxes in the future, probably.
Well, as I said the other day on one of the shows, it's a balancing act because you don't want, sometimes it works out, many times it does not, when you get people who have never been involved in the wrestling business at all, who only want to go to work for the WWE and train with the biggest company, and that's where you get some of the, you get some top athletes that may not want to get in the wrestling business for $50 and a hot dog, but you also get guys who are catered to and who are made to think, okay, I'll do this, and then I'll be in movies or whatever. You don't get guys that want to be wrestlers. Unfortunately, over the past several years, the class of guys who want to be wrestlers has been such a fucking clown show that they've given that genre of people a bad name. But I've said you want to look at the independents and see who's any good and who has potential and who has already expressed interest that they'll pay to learn this, and they want to go on the road and they want to do whatever to learn this. And then you get them before they develop an unbreakable bad habits off the indies. But at least they've established that they want to do this to get that far. And when they have the size requirements, that's ridiculous. And as somebody's going to say, oh, Cornette's all hung up on size. He calls them all a bunch of vanilla midgets or whatever the fuck. The point is, you need to have a visual size that's credible in some fashion for the charisma and the appeal and the appearance that you have. If you eliminated people under 6 feet, you would eliminate several of the top 10 box office attractions in the history of the business, including Jim Londos. The
biggest.
Yeah, the biggest. If you go under 220 pounds, you've eliminated Shawn Michaels and Eddie Guerrero and a bunch of people. And if maybe both of them, Mad Dog Vachon. If you went 5'8" and under 220 when he first got into business, he was a fucking fire plug. But then you eliminate Mad Dog Vachon, you just eliminated a Hall of Famer and the baddest street fighter in the city of Montreal before he got in the wrestling business. That's why he had to leave town. It's appearance and the charisma and the aura that somebody projects. It should determine whether they get over or not. So it's not just, but at the same time, a lot of these guys these days that get in the business have no prepossessing aura or look that indicates that they're a badass. They're just 5'8" and 175 pounds. Because those other guys the same size as me. Well, if I'm the same size as a professional baseball player, that doesn't mean I can play professional baseball. So it needs to be on a basis of what the overall picture is of a talent instead of just size, but they've gone so far with just letting everybody involved, especially on the indies, but in NXT, that brought a ton of attention to them when you could have got by with Adam Cole and a couple of the guys that are smaller but are really great performers. you just can't get away with half the roster being the same size and none of them, besides Adam Cole and that other one or two, being great performers when Vince McMahon walks in the door. And he's like, what the fuck? When do these guys finish growing? And then they immediately, and then of course, then when he's got Bruce and Johnny Ace with him, well, their experience in developmental 15 years ago speaks for themselves. Johnny Ace was signing guys from fucking that he met on airplanes and fucking girls from lingerie catalogs, and Bruce was barely able to be forced to watch the television program. And all he was going to do was say, oh, we need more guys like Johnny and Vince want. So then they back up Vince's opinion, and then he cleans house on NXT. It wouldn't have happened if they'd had 3 special guys that size instead of 25 interchangeable ones. But then Vince goes completely too far in the opposite fucking direction and changes the whole goddamn thing on a dime, on a 180-degree turn, because that's what Vince does whenever Vince gets mad and changes something.
Well, plus, I mean, part of the issue, too, he's surrounded by certain people at a time where he's not the Vince McMahon of 20 years ago or 15 years ago. If he's not remembering everything, and yet Bruce Pritchard being the one to remind you of things that you forgot.
Oh, boy.
That's a scary proposition. I mean, that's really scary.
I mean, Bruce's stories that he tells are great, and sometimes there's even a particle of truth in there. I've listened to a few that I've been involved in, and it's amazing how he almost got one thing right. But that's the thing, is that Vince may be slipping in terms of whatever he thinks about wrestling, etc., but he still has the same personal traits, which are, as soon as I decide something ain't working, I'm going in a complete opposite direction. When he fired the Barrios and the Michelle Wilson, was that her name?
Yes.
What, a year and a half ago, go completely different direction. We get Nick, don't call me Tony Khan. And when he goes to NXT for the first time, apparently ever, because nobody's ever mentioned it before, certainly in a long time, and it's been rare if it wasn't the first time ever. And he just looks around, fuck, no. Hey, 2 guys that used to work for me 15 years ago that'll still agree with me. What do you think? Let's change everything. He does that. Why do you think Shitstain got a job? Because I've said this before a million times, that fucking Rotten Raw that we all thought was going to be rotten, and they insisted on doing because it would make us look international, to have Raw going on from South Africa and Poughkeepsie. I can't remember where the fuck it was. And it sucked, and it was a shits. And the next day, let's go, Shitstain, show me the way. And then we're in chaos. It's always chaos. He will change shit, and he'll go completely in the opposite direction.
Well, if it's chaos he wants, he's certainly gone down the right road recently.
Yes. And now he's handing half the company over to the bottomless wallet. And then that's, as we've mentioned, is going to be interesting because, okay, now, if Charlotte Flair shows up there, holy shit, do you mean to tell me that they're going to have Twinkle Toes booking his Japanese outlaw princesses to come and somehow that may be a thing that keeps Charlotte back momentarily? Would the thought be that she would have to be working with Japanese amateur princesses?
I'm sure she would.
At least they're not as big as Nia Jax.
I'm sure working with Riho may be fun for her. I'm sure working with Emi Sakura would, no matter what, be easier than working with Nia Jax.
Well, it would be easier than working with Nia Jax, but I don't know about fun working with either one, because when you think about fun for Charlotte was main eventing WrestleMania and getting a fucking at least 6-figure payoff for one night. She's had that kind of fun, and now you're going to tell me that she's going to be having fun in a potential match with a Japanese outlaw girl that does apartment wrestling in Japan and imitates Freddie Mercury, complete with mustache?
Yeah, I don't think it'll bother her at all. I'm sure she'll go there. She'll love the money. She'll love being around her family. She'll have a great time. She'll make some new friends. She'll get some new opponents that we would want to see, like a Britt Baker or whoever it may be.
You just said this, and she'll make new friends. Like,
She'll make new friends. She will. She'll meet people she's never encountered.
I always looked forward to going to a new territory so I could meet new friends.
This is the days of the friendship wrestling.
So we could make bigger checks and I could meet new rats.
If you're going to All Friends, wouldn't you say it's likely you're going to make new friends? Because you don't know all the friends. So there's going to be new friends. She'll have a great time there. And there's no more Vince. And there's no more, even beyond Vince, it's really about the system that Vince has set up. The backstage shenanigans, the stooges, whatever you want to say about Tony. And all fairness to the people involved, and tell me if I'm wrong, there isn't a Bruce Pritchard in AEW. And there isn't a John Laurinaitis in AEW. That's part of the difference, the culture. It's about the culture in the locker room. You have guys there who aren't happy with everything. And you have guys there who are very happy being there because they realize what's on the other side. And they're going to have to go and get people who have never thought about being in wrestling or people who just decided, hey, I want to be in wrestling and never went to wrestling school or worked the indies. Because AEW is going to have the pipeline to actually getting people who love wrestling. Because look at what's happening there. It's not just one thing. It's all of this. You said Vince made a change in decision. He changed the decision on the fly. That's when they got Nick Khan. No, they got Nick Khan because they're trying to dump the company. That's why they got Nick Khan.
Well, I have a feeling that that's when Vince decided, hey, we need to try to dump this company. Hey, I agree with you, except now you have basically drawn the picture that we have to, the budding wrestling star has two choices. Go to a reform school where you can have the potential to make a lot of money, but you're most likely going to be miserable at whatever level you're at. Or go over here where you might not make as much money at the top, but probably more money at the bottom. And it's like Romper Room where the teacher has left for the day and the kids are all fending for themselves. Completely the opposite.
I think You're right about the one.
The childish minds are going to go for the Romper Room setting.
I think it's beyond that because everything you said is right about the WWE, but with AEW, what you're forgetting is there's also the ability to take advanced calculus. While all this other shit is happening in the fucking class for all the people that almost failed, there is that advanced class where you get a CM Punk segment, which is perfect. What's before it and after it is the issue. My goal as the new booker of AEW, my hope is that with the more serious people that come in and the more people, more importantly, that are already established stars that people aren't sick of that come in, then we'll start getting maybe more segments. It won't be one-off. It won't be the CM Punk segment on the show. It'll be the CM Punk segment and the Bryan Danielson segment, or maybe the CM Punk segment and the Charlotte Flair segment. Who knows what? I mean, Malachi Black, all things considered, his stuff has been somewhat serious, even with the smoke machine and shit.
But then what's going to happen to the EVPs? Are they going to be down the well?
EVPs come and go.
Where's Timmy? Timmy's down the well. You're going to have to run the Hardley boys out of that company with a stick. They ain't going to leave willingly or voluntarily.
Yeah, well, they
no matter how. If they get fucking Ray Stevens and Nick Bockwinkel back from the grave to come in there, they would still try to figure out a way to bury them and keep their supposed greatest
and that's fine.
Spot.
And eventually that'll run out because here's why. How much equity do the Young Bucks have in AEW?
I'm not aware of their financial status.
Zero. They have zero equity in AEW. It's owned by Tony Khan and his father.
Hey, how do you know he didn't give them all a piece of it?
I'm pretty sure he didn't give them all a piece of it.
He could have been. He's crazy.
Because I think Tony Khan's smart enough to realize eventually the Young Bucks, and I'm not saying it like in a callous way, like, I don't need you anymore. I'm throwing you in the trash. Go back to Cucamonga, kid. I don't mean it's going to be like that. But I mean, eventually it's going to be like, look, you're getting older. You know, I need a new booker for this tag team division. It's a fucking mess. We have other options. There are people here who don't want to work with you guys. There are people here who feel like they've been burned by you guys. I mean, there's a number of reasons that eventually could rise up.
Tony Khan exhibit the balls enough to fire anybody or to demote anybody or to yank a knot in anybody's tail and say, this is enough's enough. Toe the line or get the fuck out. I've yet to see an ultimatum The closest thing that Tony Khan has issued to an ultimatum was when he had his legal woman call Steven about that NDA.
It was that and banning Linda Hogan. Those are really the two examples of Tony putting his foot down.
Yes.
But I think that's the thing. And, the only other issue you have, well, it's not the only one, but a lot of this stuff is stuff that Tony likes. And that's the thing that a lot of people need to understand. It's not just, oh, they're all working him. No, this is what he likes. They happen to be doing what he likes. And that's why it works. The problem is he likes a whole bunch of shit, so you get good stuff and bad stuff all put together. But I think down the road, you think Cody's going to be an executive vice president forever? Do you think Kenny's going to be an executive vice president forever?
We can keep our fingers crossed about Kenny. I could take Cody without the other two.
Come on.
Or the other three.
Let's see Cody prove something. What has he done in the last 2 years other than try as hard as he can to break out away from wrestling?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If he's only wrestling every once in a while and he's off on a reality show, he's not offensive. I'm not offended by Cody because I don't have to watch him every week for 30 minutes do bad gymnastics routines and emote like Marcel Marceau on LSD.
No, you're right. His stuff's usually pretty quick. Usually he gets like 3 words out and then somebody either comes to the ring or attacks it.
I don't wish him ill, but I can tolerate him because when he's on, it's usually okay and it don't last too long. But with the other ones, it's self-indulgent bullshit over and over of the same flavor, along with, as I said, the gesticulating and finger pointing and etc. Possibly Marcel Marceau on bath salts.
Real quick, and we could finish up talking about the modern day WWE and their problems, which will probably be an ongoing discussion. But on the topic of Cody, seeing everything you're seeing right now, and knowing that the fans there were already booing him against Malachi, and he once again, for the second year in a row, it's like the Midnight Rider returned again. For the second year in a row, Cody takes off in the summer to go film his shows, and he's about to launch that reality show in September, which you got to think is going to be right around the time that he returns from his summer filming sabbatical. Do you think there's any chance he comes back and the fans there cheer him? I think Cody has kind of played himself out of being popular with those fans, especially against Malachi. And unless that reality show paints him like the greatest human being on the planet and Brandy's the next coming of Mother Teresa, there's no way that show's going to make him a babyface or keep him a babyface.
Well, I was about to say, you may be right. And here's the thing, because of that fan base that they have that truly enjoys that kind of thing, as I've said many times, for the kind of people who like that kind of thing, that's the kind of thing those people like. Cody is the only one of the group of darlings that actually does have good quality pro wrestling matches. And the others, the Hardly Boys and Twinkle Toes, have gone so far to diminish and slander and, make unimportant actual quality wrestling to promote their fucking gymnastics and their whatever the fuck it is they call what they do. They have made that fan base think that's good wrestling. So the only one that can actually do it is Cody. And I don't think that their fan base likes him anymore as part of that group because he doesn't do that shit.
I don't think Cody could do it. He was great in the Dustin match. Dustin happens to be one of the best over the age of 50 wrestlers in the history of the business.
No, he was great in the Dustin match, but every time he has a single match, with few exceptions, especially on a big show, it makes a lot more goddamn sense. Even he, as we've mentioned, sometimes goes too far, but he
always goes too far. What do you mean sometimes goes too far?
All right, well, then he always goes too far.
Let's see. There was the thing with him and Jade Cargill, which was ridiculous and never ended. There was Cody's battle with Anthony Ogogo, which turned into Britain versus America, and Cody defending all the interracial children in the world, whatever that was, and he came out like Apollo Creed against a Russian. He's in red, white, and blue, Mr. America, because nothing says America like, what was that, May? I don't even remember when that was.
I mentioned that it was ridiculous that we weren't mad at England anymore. The point I'm making is Cody has had at least several high-quality singles matches, which is more than I've seen from Twinkle Toes, and he's fucking got a grip on what the wrestling business is, which is more than you can say for the Hardley Boys. I'm not saying he's Lou Thez and Buddy Rogers rolled into one. However, if you're rating the executive vice presidents on their ability to have a good pro wrestling match with a good opponent and knowing what wrestling actually is rather than whatever the fuck they're doing, then Cody at least ranks ahead of the Hardley Boys and Twinkle Toes, even if that's like being the nicest guy in prison.
Cody has a grip on how much he wants everyone to love Cody. That's what Cody's grip is on. Cody has a great grip on how much he wants everyone to just get behind him and say, come on, Cody, you can do it.
Wait a minute. Cody has a great grip on everyone that he wants to get behind him. And then what? Holy mackerel.
Apparently that's why the marriage stays so well. Yeah. I don't know, but let's, I guess, move on or tie this up. I don't know. The main topic was WWE and their future that we were talking about, but that will play out.
I see your future, and it don't look too good. Or as Austin Idol said one time, your future is looking very, very dim.
But, you know, Jim, the thing is, we're all assuming Charlotte, or Ashley, whatever we want to call her now, we may want to preemptively start using her, the name she'll be able to use in the future. We all assume she's going to AEW, but there is another option, and everyone ignores it, but she could leave WWE and sign up with Codecademy and learn all about a whole new career.
Well, that's true, and I must admit that when we did the first Codecademy spots, I was ignorant, to be honest with you, about the whole thing. You know, I'm not up with all of the technology and all the ways that the kids talk about it these days. And so our Codecademy, our original spot, got quite a bit of attention. People seemed to enjoy it. It did spread the word about this fine organization, Codecademy. But I feel like I shorted them a little bit, that I didn't really know what the product was or what they were selling, because, you know, you and I, Brian, we always say we want to make sure that we only push products and services that our viewers and our listeners, they want. And of course, you being more technological than me, you said this is a good thing and this could lead to having new careers for people. But anyway, I thought before we did this week, I was going to brush up on the whole coding thing and code and so I have a better grip on things so I can tell people what a fine service Codecademy is. And I've done some reading up on this, some history. I have some documents here, as a matter of fact. I've been studying on the whole code thing. Did you know that code was invented by a man named Samuel Morse in 1837? Did you know
Morse
that?
code?
Yes, that's what they call it here on the Wikipedia. Morse code is a method used in telecommunication to encode text characters as standardized sequences of two different signal durations. Now listen, this is very important, called dots and dashes or dits and das. Morse code is named after Samuel Morse, who was also one of the inventors of the telegraph. So this makes a lot of sense. And what it is
not
Morse code. Now, there's no distinction between upper and lowercase letters. We got to mention that, and that gets on my nerves. But each Morse code symbol is formed by a sequence, as I said, of dits and das. The dit duration is the basic unit of time measurement in Morse code transmission. The duration of a da is 3 times the duration of a dit. Each dit or da within an encoded character is followed by a period of signal absence called a space equal to the dit duration. But the letters of a word are separated by a space of duration equal to 3 dits, and words are separated by a space equal to 7 dits. So you can see where you've got to go to school to learn how to do this. And the folks at Codecademy, I mean, this is complicated shit.
Yeah. That part you got right. That's the one part you got right, but Codecademy makes it very easy for anyone to learn it. When I say it, I mean not what you were talking about. It's not Morse code.
No,
it's computer coding. All the issues you're having with Hodgkiss. Imagine if Hodgkiss just signed up for Codecademy. You should be paying for it, by the way. And he could sit there and learn how to do everything all by himself.
So it's Codecademy is not Morse code. It's computer code.
That's right. If you want to learn more about Morse code, read that fantastic Edmund Morris Edison biography. Or read it in reverse order, but that's another story. But different kind of coding.
Then.
But this kind of coding, again, if Charlotte wants to do that moonsault right out of WWE, this may be a wonderful landing spot for her.
Well, that's true because it'd be a brand new career. And folks, there's never been a better time to become a programmer. With Codecademy, you can learn to code on your own terms, whether your name is Morse or not. Whether you're starting from scratch or looking to advance, Codecademy can help you reach your coding goals, especially when you learn with Codecademy. It might be the easiest way to change your career, and simply put, Codecademy is the best way to learn code online, not only teaching you job-ready coding skills, but also helping you build unique projects for your portfolio where you can earn certificates and even prep for technical interviews. You can get qualified for in-demand jobs in as little as 2 months, and learning at your own pace and your own level. You can choose from building websites to analyzing data and everything you could want. You can learn the languages, including Python, HTML, CSS, SQL, MOUSE, JavaScript, and more. And Morse. Get instant feedback.
No Morse. No, it does not teach you Morse. No.
Oh,
Morse.
I'm sorry. I thought it said and Morse. I thought it said and more. And more. Well, at first I said that, and then I realized, well, wait a minute. We're talking about the guy who invented this stuff. But that's a different thing. Anyway, folks at Codecademy, you get instant feedback where your code is tested as soon as you submit it. So there's no way for you to weasel your ass out of shit. You'll always know if you're on the right track. You cannot cheat doing this stuff. That wouldn't be Cricket or Codecademy. You can build your portfolio and get that certificate of completion to make yourself more marketable to future employers. Every time you let a future employer see you come to completion, it will add to your job-getting skills. Folks, you can do all this stuff. Land your dream job in web development, programming, computer science, data science, being a telegraph operator, and tons more. Join the millions of people learning to code with Codecademy and see where coding can take you. Sometimes coding can tell you where to get off. Get 15% off your Codecademy Pro membership when you go to codecademy.com and use the promo code EXPERIENCE. That's promo code EXPERIENCE at codecademy.com to get 15% off Codecademy Pro, the best way to learn to code. That's CODECADEMY.com. Codecademy, promo code EXPERIENCE. Cacao!
How do you do that promo in Morse code?
Hold on. This is going to take a while.
Yeah.
I figure probably about 45 minutes. That's why it takes so long to learn this with Codecademy. They zip you right through it because there's a lot of stuff going on.
I'm pretty sure you just told me to go fuck my mother in Swahili.
I didn't say your mother.
No, thank you.
I was talking about your dog.
Well, if you don't mind, Jim, I'd like to leave my dog out of it, but there are plenty of other dogs in the world of professional wrestling that we could talk about here on the show this week. And a popular topic, not to call the questioners or the subject dogs, but how else do we transition, ladies and gentlemen?
Yeah, you had a dog fucking transition to do, and you did the best you could with it.
I thank you very much. Casey Kasem, eat your heart out. But Jim, a lot of people have been sending in questions about a report from Ringside News that Jim Ross is expected to transition out of his full-time role as an announcer. Did you see this? Have you seen the questions about it?
Yes. Oh, come on, Brian. I'm with it. I'm right up to date. I got my finger in the youth of America, and I am firmly on the pulse of the whole situation here. That has already been debunked. Debunked it has. Because Jim Ross has commented on that report as saying it was news to him.
Well, to be fair, that's not exactly how debunking works. Debunking isn't, John's going to get fired. John says, I haven't heard a thing about that.
No.
And then John's out in the gutter.
We've just talked earlier in the program about how Tony Khan hadn't had the guts to fire anybody. He just lets them wander off every once in a while, and you don't notice they're gone for a while. But no, he's obviously not going to fire Jim Ross. I would assume that the news source there took and ran with some comment that somebody made, and I doubt very seriously, knowing JR, since he's just bought a condominium in Jacksonville to be closer to the TV show last year when it was there, and still owns it and still spends time there, and has gone this far with this. He's not going to jump off this horse yet. But at some point, there will be a grain of truth to that. There will be truth to it. At some point, he is going to transition from full-time announcing because, nobody lives forever. But I think that they took that and ran with an offhand comment is my take on the thing from hearing more about it.
Without going into you just talking about the people you hate and why you hate them again. Without that, but seeing the reality of how AEW is as a company and what gets on the air, and, we know lots of different things. What do you see as Jim Ross's role outside of commentary in the future?
Oh, good. In the future?
In AEW. Again, not what he could have done from the beginning, but seeing how it is now and where it's going, the trajectory it's on, what is Jim Ross's role outside of announcing, do you think, going forward?
I think that they would be best served to use Jim Ross's experience and contacts and friends and acquaintances and people not in the wrestling business, but in the world, in the periphery of the wrestling business, the rest of the world, that small place. Because if the wrestlers were going to listen to Jim Ross's advice, they would have done it by now instead of making fun of him when he made fun of the fact that they all like fucking goofs, like a cluster of quail, stand there and wait to catch people and all the other shit that he's mentioned. And you would think also, knowing JR and that he does try to be diplomatic, he probably mentioned a few of those things several times in private before he went public with them on Twitter. So the wrestlers ain't going to listen to him because they're geniuses and they know everything. But at the same time, Jim Ross has worked with or dealt with, as the head of talent relations in the WWE, dealt with everybody from television executives to merchandising people to toy people to he dealt with a bunch of agents, including one of the best with Barry Bloom. He didn't outgrow wrestling. Wrestling sunk up under him. He does the major productions now and major stars such as we used to have in wrestling and don't anymore. But JR's had so much experience with I would advise them to plumb his business mind and business contacts for things peripheral to the wrestling business, such as television and marketing and merchandising and different things. If the wrestlers ain't going to listen to him, well, he's had a variety of other jobs. So but that's the same thing on a much smaller level. Thankfully, in my time in the WWF, I did not have to associate with and interact with the level of major business people and international celebrities and yacht brokers from Toulon, France that JR did. But on a smaller scale, it's the same thing I did for Kerry Silken, as you're well aware of in Ring of Honor. Call everybody that I've ever known that had an interest in wrestling, that has a contact with television or marketing or merchandising or something, and something can happen. And it did. So that's what I would do if I was AEW and Tony Khan with JR, who can only help them because he's done deals or participated in deals or meetings or et cetera with major players in a variety of the entertainment industries. Does that make any sense? The wrestlers could learn a lot from him, but they won't. So use some of his other talents. As far as announcing, I honestly think, you can hear JR rolling his eyes verbally when he's confronted with having to speak about something that's just so fucking stupid. But you could also still hear a spark in his voice every once in a while when there's something on the screen that's actually worth talking about. And I can only imagine that he'll get up for a big CM Punk match or a Bryan Danielson or some of the more palatable folks coming in, But JR is the kind of guy, he made a commitment to do this fucking job, to be the announcer, to be Jim Ross on this television program, and goddamn, he's going to fulfill it. It's not necessarily his fault whether he's calling the action on the, fucking World Series or goddamn, Scooby-Doo on ice. There you go.
All right, well, let's ask another question. That's a popular topic. Everyone's been asking questions about CM Punk, not just the last few weeks, but the last few months. This one was sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from James in Vegas. When I look at CM Punk's career, I look at a man who thrives when presented with conflict. He has told time after time the stories about his conflicts with WWE and Vince, and ultimately, right, wrong, or different, he has been better for it. Those conflicts made him as over as he is today, and the ability to name his price. CM Punk will not get that level of conflict in AEW. My question is, do you recall any wrestlers that performed 10 times better when presented with conflict, arguments, than with friendship?
I don't know about that question, because I don't know if you can say that he's thrived because of the conflict or in spite of the conflict. And actually, maybe because of some of the conflict just being public, the people of the generation of 2010 through 2020 were smarter to the wrestling business than the people of the generation of 1990 through 2000. So is CM Punk getting over because of that conflict? Just kind of like Bryan Danielson getting over because the people wanted him to be over. And I mean, we can rehash that whole story, but the people wanted him to be used better than he was. And then there was all the issues and back and forth, and they're going to hijack the show and blah, blah, blah. With Punk, it was a little bit different, but he did the pipe bomb promo, but Punk's more of a verbal guy than Bryan Danielson. Bryan Danielson can cut some promos when he's motivated, but that's not his forte, where it is more of Punk's. The point is, it's an offshoot of Steve Austin, the anti-authority, anti-establishment, take this job and shove it, which worked in any era pretty much. It kind of was Dick the Bruiser, 20 years before Steve Austin. Except Austin was pushed to the top by the same person that he was having the goddamn confrontation with, because Vince McMahon, because people were just finding out about the real Vince McMahon and the dynamic he had and the owner and et cetera, et cetera. Punk was having a real conflict with the same guy and his minions play out, and people were so much smarter, they knew about it, and they managed to integrate that into the deal. I don't know that Punk would have necessarily been happier or better served if he hadn't had conflict and argument, but everybody's had to fight some level to get to the top or to stay at the top or whatever. But at least Punk's was the same kind of thing to me as an Austin, or as the anti-establishment hero or the underdog trying to fight back against the fucking asshole boss. It's just that it was more real because everybody knew about it by this point. What do you think?
Well, he's asking, I think, a little bit more about the behind-the-scenes stuff than actually how it's presented on camera. And it is interesting because CM Punk won't be having that. You wouldn't imagine, unless he decides he wants to take down an executive vice president. But if he had gone back to WWE, that conflict of just running your head against the wall, dealing with the system you're up against, I took the question as being that.
Well, yeah, it wouldn't have worked, and it wouldn't have helped him, and he wouldn't have wanted it. And because he was trying to get over, and he was getting over anyway, and he had the conflicts because he was getting over, and they worked them into the story. I'm sure he would have probably, and he got more over because of the conflicts, because the people were on his side.
And the other thing, too, is he was in a system, again. Vince eventually got to the point where he was willing to do stuff with Punk. Triple H may never have seen him at the level that the fans saw CM Punk at. if he went back to WWE, he would still have guys there. We've heard some of them open their mouths in the last couple of weeks. He would still have guys there saying he's not a main eventer, he's not this. In AEW, he has none of that. They respect what he's done, and he walks in the door as someone who is a veteran they're happy to have on the team. That wouldn't necessarily be the case in WWE.
No, and that's why he's not back in WWE, and he didn't have to be. And as far as, obviously, there's going to be no conflicts in AEW, and there doesn't need to be, and there shouldn't be. And because basically he's doing them a favor to get, for money, a favor for money. He's blessed them with his presence. But the thing is, he doesn't need any more conflict either anywhere because he doesn't need to get over anymore. At this stage in his career, CM Punk is not in need of getting over any farther than he already is, and probably doesn't necessarily want to try to get. He's not looking at this as a long-term career move. I'm back, and I'm going to be back for 10 fucking years. He's over enough now that if he runs for a year or 2 years or whatever that it is, and he works with people that he wants to elevate, some by putting them over and some by just being in the ring with them and teaching them, giving them high-profile match, whatever the case, he's got a couple of years of goodwill worth with these people, especially right now. And hopefully, I'm sure the thought is that he can bring, and already has, at least with his debut numbers on both shows, the Rampage dropped back where it was before because he wasn't on the fucking thing. But he's got enough goodwill to run a couple of years now. And as I said, and hopefully bring some of the disgruntled, the disfranchised or disgruntled WWE fans that used to watch and liked him back to the set to watch AEW. But he's not going to need any conflicts to thrive. This is not, as Mama Cornette used to say, he's closer to the end than to the beginning. So he's not going to want or need any of that.
To the overall point and example, although not the same kind of conflict, to try to come up with another way of looking at this, there are guys who left Mid-South Wrestling and never wrestled the same way again because they didn't have that push behind them anymore. It was a different kind of push. That's kind of, I guess, in a sense. But then also when you had guys that left Mid-South and went to the WWF, they instantly adapted to their circumstances. They weren't being pushed to go out and play hard anymore. They were being pushed to go out and have 8-minute house show matches and work their gimmick and do personal appearances in tights. And they took advantage of that because it furthered their careers. For the same reason as guys in the 80s knew that you couldn't work in Mid-South Wrestling and have a WWF style house show match, you also couldn't work in the WWF and have a Mid-South house show match. So you adapted to the surroundings and the environment that you were in, but that, it just depended on whether anybody ever went back in the other direction as to whether let's face it, Koko Ware was one of the most impressive athletes in wrestling from 1981 to 1985, and then he went to the WWF and got fat and got a bird and never had another good match. But, sometimes that goes one way, sometimes goes both ways. But the really top talent could adapt to their environment and do their shit either way. And for the record, Coco got the bird and then he got fat. Just want to make sure
Well, are you insinuating he ate the bird?
No, the bird. Somehow he didn't eat the bird as he gained all that weight. You would think one of those nights on the road, maybe it's a little late. Things have happened. You're hungry.
Hey, there was a Memphis TV that apparently Plowboy Frazier was on the outs. He had switched and become a babyface. Funny we're talking about Plowboy in the Nia Jax program. He'd become a babyface, and the first family of Jimmy Hart and all of his heels had stolen his rooster, Sylvester. And the Hart and the whole first family, I think Coco was still in it, and Chick Donovan, I know, had a drumstick. They came out on TV one Saturday morning eating a fried chicken in honor and they said it was Sylvester. Anyway.
I love the first family in 1981. I absolutely do. But Jim, let's get another question here. Another one a current event that someone wants to know your thoughts about. This was sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Jason in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania.
Wilkes-Barre.
Wanted to get your thoughts on Trevor Murdoch winning the NWA title this past weekend.
Well, Trevor Murdoch is so tough, he could strap up.
Stop it. I didn't even put two and two together when I asked you that question. Behave yourself, young man.
I'll tell you what, we were just talking about poor Sylvester, and then you transition to that. That's a dead dog dedication I've ever heard.
I didn't. Oh, this is so unfortunate in every way.
See, we really ought to think about this program before we do it. No, I'm so happy because Trevor Murdoch is another one of those guys that if the territories were still here, he would have had steady employment in the wrestling business for the last 20 years. He's big and he has a unique look and he can work and he gets the business and he can talk in a way that you think he's a real person, that he's who he's purported to be. Great guy all around, on camera and off, and has worked his ass off and thought that he was done pretty much in wrestling a couple of years ago, and then got this resurgence. And now, and Nick Aldis, credit to him, they knew that St. Louis, back at Wrestling at the Chase, a big event, they wanted to do something to not only get some news, but also just to reward guys, traditional wrestlers, just all the way around. I thought it was a great deal, and I'm happy for him that he won that and that he got that and got a chance to be recognized for all the work that he's put in.
Well, Jim, our next question ties into that one.
What is it about Colonel Sanders?
This question was sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Cody in London, Kentucky. Where's London, Kentucky, Jim?
London, Kentucky is not far from Corbin, Kentucky, which is where outside of Corbin was where my mother was born. And it's just down the road or up the road from Barberville, where we used to run Smoky Mountain shows.
That's scary town.
And there's a London, Kentucky and a Paris, Kentucky. See, you can come to Kentucky and just travel and see the sights of the world. And a Versailles, Kentucky. Versailles, Kentucky is beautiful this time of year.
All right.
They have the running of the hounds.
What about Saigon, Kentucky?
Well, ever since the airlift, that place has been the shits.
Here's Cody from London's question. We recently saw Nick Aldis lose the title after a 1,000-day reign. Is that right? 1,000 plus day reign. Wow.
Sounds right. Almost 3 years, right?
When this situation happens, a very strongly booked champion finally losing, how do you take care of them after this, booking-wise? It's kind of like the end of a book. Where do you go from there? Do you move them to a mid-card run? Another example would be when Roman drops the belt to whoever. What happens to him after that? How do you take care of Roman? How would you take care of a longtime champion?
Well, it used to be easier than it is now. But I mean, part of it depends on the roster. A lot of people remember in the late 90s when everything was hot in the WWF. If Austin dropped the title to The Undertaker or The Undertaker dropped title, the point is you had several guys that people would accept as the WWE champion. And look at in that 5-year period there, Rock and Austin and Taker and Triple H and Michaels and Foley and etc. So, it helps when you have several guys that are at the top like that, because not only do you have another challenger for your new champion, but you also have guys that you can put your old champion in with that are still seen as that main event level, and it's not a come down, right? If you just have a well-protected big-name champion and his one challenger, and that challenger wins, and the next guy on the card is Taka Michinoku, And that's kind of tough. I don't know currently what the NWA roster looks like or who they're featuring or whatever, but just as a rule of thumb, I mean, the NWA world champions, a lot of times when they lost the belt, they were nearing the end of their full-time career just because by the time they'd reached that pinnacle, they'd been in the business 15 or 20 years. By the time you were awarded something like that, become noticed as one of the best in the world. And then he made so much money, you could kind of take time off afterwards because you were going to need it. You know, Harley, after his last run as champion, he worked several more years, but he was involved in the office in Kansas City and he had promotional interests. You know, the Funks, Terry retired 18 times, but as far as wrestling full time in the United States rather than doing the tours of Japan, did Terry wrestle anywhere regularly past the mid 80s in this country regularly?
After his WWF run in 86, NWA run was 6 months.
Yeah. So the point is a lot of those guys, now when you talk about still a strong regional champion, a lot of times that was solved because those guys would go to a different territory. And sometimes if they didn't, the Sheik and Bruiser never left Indiana for 15 years. Sheik never left Michigan for 15 years. They went other places, but they were always in their home areas because they owned the place and they were paying themselves 2 and 3 times. But it ended up killing the place. And so the point is you always keep your former champion still in a main event mix and still wrestling other guys at that level. And it could be revisited between him and the new champion at any point in time, but it's harder when you either don't have a lot of guys at that level or when you can't ever let go of. Now the worst part about wrestling for the big companies is if you're signed to a 5-year contract and you're hot for 2.5 years and then they still got you for 2.5 more and they don't want to let you go to somebody else, but they're finished with you. Then they start moving you down. And by the time your 5 years is up, you're a middle card guy. It used to be if you were a main event guy, when your main event run was over with in a particular promotion, you'd go somewhere else and be a main event guy. So that's by the nature of the way the business is set up now. It's harder to, honestly, I think that may be why I wouldn't have done it in a promotional war, but that may be why they said Braun Strowman ain't worth $1 million. We've done all we can do. Bray Wyatt ain't worth however much money. We burned him alive. What the fuck else are we going to do? They paint themselves in that corner with booking these guys like this and stuff you can't come back from. And then they either pay them to be middle card guys or they let them go and they go to a brand new atmosphere and change their look and they're stars again, which is the best thing for them, but not for the company. But the company put their own selves in that position. So it's fucking crazy. It's just crazy, Brian.
That's right. Perhaps Vince could talk to someone on the phone and get some help. I wondered what you would do if I transitioned to a spot that wasn't on this week's show.
I wondered if you would enlighten me as to who he needs to talk to on the phone.
Well, it doesn't really matter.
BetterHelp did not join us this week.
And truthfully, it doesn't really matter. He would forget who he talked to 5 minutes later.
Yeah,
anyway.
He'd forget who he talked to.
But let's get another question that ties into recent NWA news, Jim. This one was sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Darren Walker in London. I'm assuming the UK, not London, Kentucky.
Well, hey, London, Kentucky's a big place. They just got their second stoplight put in.
On Saturday night, Awesome Kong retired at the latest NWA pay-per-view in an emotional angle with Gail Kim. What are your views on Kong and Gail Kim and what they achieved in the wrestling business?
Well, I heard about this incident, and that's kind of cool also that they brought, because Kong hasn't wrestled in a couple of years,
since
right?
AEW, yeah, the early days of AEW.
She was on one of the first programs, and she was going to do the Glow series, and then they canceled that because of the COVID. But honestly, that AEW run was it'd been a couple of years since Kong had wrestled last, and I can't remember where she's been part-time for the past several years. So this is not a surprise that she retired. And I think she probably looked at this as the opportunity to say it publicly, officially, even though she probably mostly had. I know she had back problems some years ago, and I don't know how much part that played. And then when she finally got the WWF run and had gotten pregnant, when she became Karma. And so didn't get to fulfill that. But point is, I loved those matches between Awesome Kong and Gail Kim. I've got to say that probably in a completely different style, I liked them as much as the matches between Charlotte and Rhea Ripley that we saw, the empty arena match at WrestleMania last year, and the other, at least real good match they had. They stand out to me as some of the most memorable women's matches that I've seen in the modern era, at least, maybe ever, because it was a perfect combination. Gail Kim, such an athletic, beautiful, small but feisty underdog babyface girl who worked and fought from underneath and was always outsized, but what a baby face, and and she could work her ass off, and what appeal she had. And then Kong, it was the perfect female monster. She was like Bull Nakano had an element of what the fuck's going on here with the face paint and the spiky hair. She was like 80s, 90s punk rock, Seattle grunge meets Japanese, whatever the fuck. She was a great talent. But Kong, to me, was a better monster because she was huge and she had the great looking outfit and she was an over the top personality, but she was real. She looked, because it was still, there's fucking Kong. She looks pretty much the same walking around. She can beat your ass. She got over with me when she slapped the shit out of Bubba the Love Sponge that time.
Yeah, didn't she beat him up backstage at Impact? It was a big deal.
She didn't beat him up, or they'd have carted him out feet first. She just cuffed him about the head and face and told him what she thought of him. If she'd have really got on him and tried to kick the shit out of him, I can't imagine what he would have looked like afterwards. But anyway, that's the thing. It was, and I've mentioned this before. This is not talking out of school. Besides that, it's been fucking 15 years. But Dutch Mantell at that time was in charge of the Knockouts division because Shitstain didn't want to be bothered. And so he booked it like traditional wrestling. It was that's why the Knockouts segments started to become the highest rated portion of Impact. And that's when Shitstain got involved and fucked it all up with his show business. But Dutch's philosophy of that was basically, it's a monster movie. It's David and Goliath. It's wrestling. Small baby face, monster heel. Baby face won't give up. The heel is fucking intimidating. And they both knew how to work. And Kong could work her gimmick, her size, didn't try to do stupid things that she shouldn't do or that she couldn't do. And Gail Kim was just incredible. And it worked, and it stood out amongst girls' matches. They were better than many of the guys' matches, especially many of the guys' matches at that Impact Zone on the undercard. I get that, fucking people dressed up as sharks and whatever the fuck. So I loved those matches, and it was a great program. They did great ratings, and whether it was pay-per-view, TV, they never failed to fucking deliver. So I like the idea that since Gail Kim was going to make an appearance, they brought Kong in and did that at the same time because they obviously were proud of the body of work that they created with each other. But yeah, and that's what I'm saying about all female wrestling these days is you don't just have 5 girls matches and 5 guys matches just because that's even and that's equal. Because for one thing, when you tally your list of great male wrestling talent and then you tally and quantify your list of great female wrestling talent, there ain't as many on the female list as there is on the male list. There's not as many on either, maybe as there used to be, but There's not as many good girls as there is good guys. So when you make it half and half on a card, you're eliminating guys that are better performers and you're dragging the girls' average down. It's better when it's an attraction and it's special, and you figure out your top babyface, your top heel, and if you have a company that big, tag teams as well, and figure out really top opposition for those people, and then just bring your other girls in just like a small territory used to do with guys. Bring the other guy, once you got your grade 8 or whatever, then you bring other guys in or other girls in and feed them to those stars. And if it was not a constant thing, because, I mean, we should ask Uncle Dave. I'm sure he could recite off the top of his head like Dustin Hoffman in a major Hollywood motion picture, the exact statistics of every demographic. But since they've added more girls' matches than have ever happened in wrestling before, is the female audience up on television? Certainly, is it half and half now?
It's certainly not half and half.
Well, then maybe it ain't working.
That's the big experiment I always wonder about. If there was an all-woman show that was professional by one of the major companies, how much support would it actually get?
Once in a while or every week?
If there was a weekly wrestling show building up to quarterly pay-per-view events, how much attention would it get?
Well, the NWA just did one.
But with all due respect to the NWA, I'm talking about one of the two major companies who have money and television.
Well, I mean, they're happy to try it, but I can tell you already, no, it's not what. I mean, try all girls football. Let's have an NFL team have a women's division, or let's try the UFC doing all female fights instead of just the ones either with Ronda Rousey that's real or Paige Van Zandt that's gorgeous or whatever. That ain't going to work either. Because at the root of it, people watch contact sports to see people get beat up, and a larger portion of the public wants to see guys get beat up than girls, whether it's a work or a shoot, especially when in many cases, a lot of the girls' work leads you to understand right off that it's a work and not a shoot. But that's what I'm not against all female wrestling. I'm against constant female wrestling and in often cases at the expense of male wrestling that would be better. Take your top girls and feature them as attractions and don't just make it run of the mill.
Let's get another question here. We'll see how run of the mill it is. This was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Andre the Widget in Toronto. I will say his email says Andre Midget, but this says Andre the Widget, so I don't know if he mistyped it or what.
Well, is the midget a widget or is the widget a midget?
We shall find out. Let's see if his question stands tall. I've always noticed
or is this guy just an idiot?
I've always noticed that when Hulk Hogan throws a work punch, he puts his left hand on the opponent's head and strikes it with his right hand.
Yeah, he does.
This annoys the hell out of me.
Yeah, it does.
It's so obviously fake and right in front of our eyes. I was wondering what you thought about this style of working a punch, and if you could tell me other wrestlers who threw them like that.
Oh, I always hated that. And God almighty, I mean, there's some other guys that have grabbed the guy by the hair or by the head with their left hand and thrown. Jimmy Valiant used to throw a heck of a right hand that he would draw back in the 70s when he was lean and in shape and, the heel Jimmy Valiant. And he'd grab somebody by the hair of the head with his left hand and he would draw way back and it looked stiff. Not like Hogan's. I've seen that many times, but goddamn, I can't think. I don't know there's no more pushed wrestler than Hulk Hogan, but can you think of a major pushed wrestler with a worse looking punch? Because I mean, it was like Austin's mud hole stomping. Those kicks looked like shit, but he was so over and he just did it with such oomph that people looked past it. Was Hogan just so over that they They just looked past it. Can you think of anybody else whose punches to the head looked worse?
Off the top of my head, I can't. I'm sure there are other examples, but my thing is, where would he have been taught to do it that way?
See, honestly, a lot of times especially when guys who, how can I say that Hogan was a musician, right? He was a kind of a wrestling fan, but he was a musician from what we've been able to gather, even from, from the books that he's written or been written about him. He was not a standout athlete in school or whatever. But a lot of times some guys just they get other moves, but they don't get the simple stuff like looking like you're in a fight, throwing a punch, laying your hands on a guy stiffly, whatever. I've said many times about these, the guys on TV that do all the flips and everything. They can do a 760-degree flip off the top rope with such unerring accuracy, and their punches and kicks look like shit. So it's not necessarily where you're taught, but it's how you apply that teaching. And if you can't sing, you can have Pavarotti try to give you singing lessons, but you're still going to sound like a fucking frog. So I don't know that anybody taught him to do it that way. I just think that that's kind of the way that he did it. I mean, a lot of people, even great wrestlers, sometimes had things that they just could not do. I've said this before, but you might not remember. Bobby Eaton could not do a pile driver. Couldn't. Mentally, he couldn't fucking do it. And what he would do, and this is crazy from a guy, the Alabama Jam, right? The greatest, most precise flying leg drop off the top that always landed on its target, always was flat, always was perfect form, flawless, right? When he tried to give somebody a pile driver, he couldn't sit straight back. And he told me this, he was talking in the car one time, because every time somebody would call a pile driver for a finish, he would ask Dennis if he could do it. And then later on, Stan didn't have a good pile driver either. But he would pick the guy up, but instead of being able to sit straight back, he would bend his right leg and go over, and so it would go kind of sideways. And it wasn't dangerous because he was protecting the guy, but it looked rotten because he was protecting the guy. And he knew what he was doing wrong and still couldn't fucking do it. So, point is, besides Hulk Hogan just being not a fucking polished worker, he's a polished worker, all right, but not an athletic, physical marvel. He didn't throw a punch like Terry Funk or Jerry Lawler or Dick Murdoch. But there's sometimes, even great wrestlers, there's certain things that they just cannot do. And so they just stay away from that if they know what they're doing. Or if they're Nia Jax, that list is so long, they can't stay away from it and still get in the ring.
Well, Jim, in talking about Hulk Hogan's punches, of course, it may have hurt the fans' feelings, but it never really hurt the wrestlers. Of course, we talked about Nia Jax earlier. She certainly has hurt some wrestlers. Maybe enough wrestlers that some scuttlebutt's going on about how can we get together and take care of this once and for all. Perhaps we need legal representation to finally end this reign of Nia Jax once and for all.
Do you mean to tell me that they should sue for shitty sunset flips? That they should prosecute for potatoes? Well, then I know the one man who can handle this case.
Call Stephen P. News. If you need to sue. An outlaw mud show or two. He'll sue the rest.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, if you've had your toes stuck in your ears by an uncoordinated wrestler, if you're walking recklessly and attempting to fall because of brain damage committed by professional malfeasance in the squared circle, or If you've been damaged in any other way, you or your family members or your close social circle have been damaged by greed and avariciousness perpetrated by major corporations, if you've been poisoned, if you've been harmed, or if you've been, in other words, fucked around by people that need to be brought to legal heel, then I can think of no better person to do it than the legal heel himself, Stephen P. New, at newlawoffice.com.
That's good.
888-692-8084. He's a heel to the opposition, but he's the baby face of your dreams, folks, because you do not want to go into a courtroom with the dodgy American jurisprudence system without a legal beagle on your side that will turn into a bulldog when challenged and fight for your rights. I refer you again to newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. Stephen P. New, the man for you. How many countless? We lost track at the dozens and dozens. And that's pretty big considering all the cases around the world, the dozens and dozens, all the attorneys around the world, rather, dozens and dozens of cases that Stephen P. New has taken on that have been referred to him by the cult of Cornette. That's pretty impressive. That's impressive as pissing 6 feet up a wall when you're flat on your back. That's what that is. And if Brian wasn't muted right now, he'd be laughing over that one too, but nobody else will ever understand the reference. Anyway, newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. Our friend Stephen P. New will help you navigate the treacherous waters of the legal system.
That is correct.
And then he'll help you piss up the wall while you're flat on your back.
Well, let's see how much more pissing up the wall we can do this week before we wrap things up. Jim, this next one doesn't even appear to be a question. I'll read this one anyway. Sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Anthony Hobdy. Hello, Jim. Where I start. I'm going to read this verbatim, by the way.
Okay, please read it. Not only verbatim, but read it exactly like he wrote it.
Where I start. The goofy dork of co-host of yore. His hurt they are telling the truth on TV about the garbage show he love. Let's be real, Hawaiian fan, is a diehard AEW fan. We all knew the New Day he loves so much is the comedy act. WWE programming is for kids. He don't remember being in love with the Ultimate Loser as a kid. Another thing. MB, this is QT Marshall time. MB, this is QT Marshall time. MB Big Show only trust one person to be in the ring with. I think you should give a chance to QT. His promos, this must have been sent by fucking QT.
No,
his promos are good. He looks like an old school heel. MB, this is QT Marshall time. That's the second time he has told MB that it's QT Marshall time.
Who is MB?
You talk good about Jungle Botched. You talk good about Jungle Botched. He is garbage with anyone he get in the ring with. And these are the thoughts of Anthony Hobdy. Jim, any thoughts?
I wonder if that's his real name or if he knows how to spell it. He possibly misspelled his real name. Could it be Anthony Hopkins? Probably not.
Could it be Anthony Marshall?
Now, come on. If QT was writing that, it was only because Tony was dictating it.
Well, I don't want to talk about Tony, Dick, and QT anymore here on the show. Let's move on to
dictating.
Forgive me, I misunderstood. Our next question.
I always, the first question I ask when I'm hiring a new secretary is, do you take dictation?
Our next question, and by the way, they call them assistants now, but our next question sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com.
Who? The people that take dictation? The dictators?
Well, secretaries. You don't hear anyone called a secretary anymore.
You don't?
Somehow that's become like a ostracized word.
No, wait, now that's completely incorrect.
No, I'm serious.
I turned on the TV yesterday and heard from the Secretary of State.
Clearly a different type of secretary.
Well, you said they don't use the word secretary anymore.
They really don't. In the business setting, they call the former secretary the assistant now.
Oh, how about paid lap whore?
Let's get another question here on the show. Sounds like you know some of the people I've worked with. This question was sent to Corny
I
Drive
tell
Thru.
you, the first secretary I hired, I said, come in here and let's get something straight between us right now. And I didn't have any further problems.
All right, well, we may have to watch a video together after this show just to remind us what we can and can't say on the air. Jim, this next question was sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com.
There's the Secretary of the Treasury, too. The Secretary of the Treasury keeps all the money.
And, of course, with the NWA, Jim Barnett, the Secretary of Cock.
No, come on now.
I'm kidding.
No, he was the Secretary of the, he was the Secretary Treasurer.
He was the Treasurer, yes. That's right. This next question, which I've been so desperately trying to get to, was sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Charlie in Starkville, Mississippi. MJF was recently asked what wrestler influenced him the most. MJF said, quote, "Before me, I'm going to say who would equal the ability to get a visceral reaction from the crowd was Roddy Piper. Piper made me fall in love with wrestling." What are your thoughts on MJF's take on Piper?
I can see that, and I think it's entirely justified. And I mean, I've said this before. Piper didn't come along until I was Piper didn't come along anywhere I could see him on video until 1979. Then not only did I get to see him live in Cincinnati when Crockett opened up that town, but also you could start getting the tapes and everything. So I was already 18, 19 years old, so I can't say I was a fan when I was a kid. I was already smart to the business, but that made me a fan of Piper's even more because at that time, I had some frame of reference of how good he was. And I can see the similarities in the verbal ability. Actually, let's be honest, MJF's verbal ability and vocabulary, at least, exceeds Roddy Piper's. But what he's talking about is the genuineness of the delivery, and that you could believe Piper and that he could get heat in an ice flow. And, you know, before Jericho latched onto him and made him the swirly king, that's where MJF was heading. Hopefully, if he could ever get away from Jericho, if he's not the albatross that's around poor seafaring Maxwell Jacob Friedman's neck forever, maybe he can get to that again. But I can see where, because Piper made you believe he was one of those guys that his mission was, even if you don't believe in the wrestling business, I want you to believe in me.
Piper was one of those guys when I was a kid. Even though his prime had been a few years earlier, there were enough videos and people remembered it, and he was on the cartoons for us kids. But really, it was like Piper and Flair were the two heels that the kids in the playground wanted to behave like. Not just be like.
Yeah.
How many Roddy Piper fans, show of hands out there, how many Roddy Piper fans went through a stupid phase, where you started acting like Roddy Piper in school? Which made no sense. When all of a sudden you're talking like this, why is he pinching his ear while he talks? We don't know. No one understood any of that, but every Roddy Piper fan does. Every Flair fan goes through a phase where you kind of just want to strut around a little bit. Don't even do the full woo, but you know how you would do the half woo, like the woo, the low woo?
Yeah.
Piper and Flair had that. There aren't too many guys
also, just when you think you know all the answers, I change all the questions. And he got more mileage out of I'm Roddy Piper and you're not than Chevy Chase did when he originated it. But it was just the way he did things.
And it's interesting, too. I got to think eventually MJF will be able to get, I mean, this has to end, him and Jericho. We'll talk about it on the show, what they're going to do on the pay-per-view, what I fear they may do based on the way they're setting this up. But eventually MJF has to get away. It's not really albatross as much as he's stuck on the beach with a beached whale. And eventually you either find your way around it or you cut right through and you get off the beach.
Or sometimes you maybe just sit there and play in its shade.
But the thing with MJF, going under the assumption he'll be doing good things again with other people soon, I think he's one of those guys that has that ability, that as AEW picks up in popularity, which it should with the increase of stars coming in, that kids will see someone like MJF and that could be the next heel they impersonate on a playground.
Except I don't know if the kids will get all the words he uses.
Well, Bud is easy to understand.
Well, Bud's easy to understand.
Yeah, in some playgrounds, it's easy to smoke. But Bud is easy to understand. I think they will be...
We don't encourage that.
No, not with the
See, you're
children.
always getting on me for telling people to tie their children behind the rad power bikes, and then here you are pushing the drugs. We don't want the kids getting on the marijuana pills.
No.
At a young age.
Stay off those pills.
That's what Nick Goulas asked. I don't know who it was. I saw Michael St.
Michael
John.
Hayes says it was him.
Well, no, listen to me. It was about Michael Hayes and the Freebirds, but I saw Michael St. John at Bobby's funeral, and he was one of the announcers or somebody. Maybe it was Tom Renesto, the booker. Bobby Eaton told me the story originally. Michael Hayes was not in the room, and Bobby worked for Nick longer than anybody. But Nick asked somebody in his office, said, "Is them Freebirds on them marijuana pills?" We got to, because they wanted to play the rock and roll music when they come out, and that's just crazy.
Do you think Nick asked George for advice when dealing with younger people? Georgie, what are they up to? You know, do you think like he sought out someone else's advice?
Daddy, I tell you, I think, just like when we stopped and we had sandwiches and we had a little picnic on the way to the town last night, I think the boys think you're really great.
All right. Well, let's see if we can find one or two more questions, and then we'll run as far away from this show as we can. I'm looking down this. This
like our heads are on fire, ladies and gentlemen.
This could be a fun topic. This was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from David. He didn't specify his last name here, so I won't say it, even though it's in his email. Hello, Jim and Brian. I've got a quick question. Who is the biggest liar in wrestling?
Oh, Jesus.
Hulk Hogan, Paul Heyman, Bruce Pritchard, or who is your pick if you have someone that's not on that list, or someone who could beat those men for the title?
Oh, God. Well, I mean, see, now it's like the best worker in the business. Well, at what style? At what style of lie? At an entertaining lie that doesn't hurt anybody, that's a story to tell in the locker room, or, fictitiousness about how great you are personally, like Hogan is, guilty of so many times, or just, lying to, get something out of somebody or to work them that, Paul Lee has been noted by other people to have experience in the past. He's never really lied that much to me because I knew ahead of time, didn't have that many dealings. Or is it just you remember part of a story, so you make up the rest to make it entertaining, and it bears some resemblance, as I've mentioned, to truth, but with, liberal sprinklings of, I'll just make the shit up because it sounds better, Bruce. So there's no way to really crown someone the official king of all bullshit. I mean, we've talked about in the old days, Bobby Jaggers was a great fucking storyteller. He would tell stories on the plane about how he once almost married one of the Wilson sisters from Hart, or how he was racing a fucking Corvette one time and flipped it, and it flipped end over end and demolished the car, and he ended up sitting on the interstate still strapped into the seat holding the steering wheel, but there was no car around him. And I mean, but Paul Morton, Ricky Morton's father, and I'm not even going to get started on some of Ricky's stories, but Paul Morton's story one time when I was like 16 years old, he was telling me and my mom how he got bald. He lost all his hair because he was on a ship that got hit with a landmine or whatever in World War II. And they put his head in a plaster cast for 6 months. And when they took the plaster cast off, he was bald, and he'd been that way ever since. And Paul Morton was busy because he was not only in the Navy in World War II, he was in the Merchant Marine. And I think at one point he may have been in the Army too. But
so that's where Ricky gets it from.
Yes, and and they're the most entertaining stories that you will ever hear, and it doesn't hurt anybody. So it just depends. Wrestling is all about good lies and bad lies. The bad lies come from the promoters and the bookers and the people that underhandedly wanted people to do shit that might be not in their best interest because they wanted them to do it. But the good lies are all the stories that the guys used to tell in the locker room when they'd walk in, because that was all you had to do. You didn't have a TV in the locker room. There was no cell phone. There was no internet. If somebody brought a transistor radio in, that may be unusual. You sat there and stared at each other's Peters and told fucking ridiculous stories. And that's why everybody used to be a good promo. And now that's why nobody's a good promo. Because nobody tells good stories. But so there's good lies and there's bad lies.
All right. Well, let's get at least one more question.
Let's get
here.
one good question in.
Well, good is the problem, but let's try this one. Surprisingly, the Brood has been a popular topic as Gangrel has, I guess, somewhat been in the news. This was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Carl in Lisbon, Connecticut.
Wait a minute. I thought that was in Portugal.
You know, it's a interesting international show here this week. It's like the Epcot Center of wrestling podcasts. But during your SummerSlam review on last week's experience, you mentioned that you enjoyed the Brood and that they were not appreciated enough. Would you mind elaborating on your thoughts on the stable, and do you think the Brood could have survived successfully into the 2000s?
Well, yes, first, they could have survived as long as they were used adequately, because they were all three talented. And I know that Edge and Christian probably came out the best, and Edge.
That's his name now. That's his name now.
No, quit now. Come on. He looks like Dog the Bounty Hunter in shape. But no, I like Edge. Edge came out the best one of the bunch of them. Christian came out better. Poor Gangrel got left behind. When it started, he was the veteran and they were the kids. And it was his gimmick. Gangrel is a vampire. He had the teeth and the fucking chalice of blood and the whole 9 yards. But it was a great gimmick, and those guys looked great together. And I'm not just talking about the, dropping of blood from the ceiling or whatever, but the spooky music and the whole True Blood was hot around that time. Vampires were hot in the books and the Lost Boys.
It was before True Blood, though.
Was it before? Okay, well, yeah. The point is, for that, there was like 10 years there where everything was oriented around vampire.
Interview with a Vampire.
The erotic fiction, the fucking, all the movies, the whole 9 yards. And that fit in. It was timely, but yet at the same time, those guys were good workers. And I've mentioned when I saw Edge and Christian's tryout match, and I was saying, hey, I was telling JR at the monitor, these guys are fucking great. And he's like, shh, because Carl DeMarco was sitting there. He said, we signed them for $300 a week Canadian. Don't tell DeMarco they're great. But I knew that they were good workers. And as I said, it was Gangrel's gimmick because he was the vampire and had the teeth and they looked good together. And that's one of my issues with Kevin Dunn. Because I was doing commentary one day. I said, not since the Fabulous Freebirds have the three men like this caused such chaos as a tag team or something like that. I compared them to the Freebirds. And a week later, whatever, was some production meeting. After the meeting, Kevin calls me up and says, Jim, why did you compare the Brood to the Freebirds? I was like, why do you compare Mickey Mantle to Babe Ruth or whatever? I said, they're a blonde three-man tag team that's good workers, and I was trying to draw a comparison between them and big stars so it would elevate them. And he said, well, it dates them. Nobody remembers the Freebirds. I said, oh, God damn, that's nothing. I said, God damn it. I said, Kevin, not only were the Freebirds on national television just several years ago for our competitor, because this was 1997, right? It was the Freebirds were in WCW in 1991. I said, but they were a legendary tag team. And if these guys draw 10% of the money that the Freebirds did, then we'll all be turning cartwheels. So I want people to think they're as good as the Freebirds. And et cetera. But anyway, that was a side note. But yeah, I liked their work. I liked the gimmick and the kids, as they say, the kids liked them. And you couldn't, keep three guys like that tied up with each other forever, especially when Edge is going to be a star. So eventually, yes, but they just didn't do as much with them as they could have when they were a three-man team, the Brood. I thought they could have been elevated more and then break the guys off and do whatever. But that's just me. What was the question?
It was about the Brood, your assessment of the Brood.
Oh, well, did I assess them?
I think so. One of my favorite things, before he was Gangrel, David Heath was in the Blackhearts.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the original kayfabe? I don't know how much this was said on the air, but it was in the magazines. I think it was. I read this somewhere. The kayfabe backstory of the Blackhearts.
They were illegitimate sons of Stu Hart. Right? They were the black sheep of the family.
And who was the mother?
Oh, God. Who? Help me.
The Fabulous Moolah.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
The Blackhearts were Stu Hart and Fabulous Moolah's demon offspring.
Because the Blackhearts were two guys who wore black masks, and it was a gimmick that they came up with to go to Calgary and feud with the Hart family, the Blackhearts. And then things changed after that. And it was Gangrel and David Heath. Wait a minute. Who was Nash?
Tom Nash.
Kevin Nash. Tom Nash was the original one,
yeah. Because he was a longtime wrestling fan.
Yeah.
It was Tom Nash and who was the other one?
It was Tom Nash and Dave Heath.
No, there was another guy.
Those were the original two, and then, oh God damn it, who else was the other Blackheart? Now we're supposed to be experts. Of course, we lost everybody else 15 minutes ago, so. Anyway, interesting gimmick.
I'm trying to remember who was the other Blackheart. Now I'm completely going.
Well, Google it, motherfucker.
I am. Unfortunately, the Blackhearts weren't a big enough tag team to have a fucking Wikipedia page.
Well, somebody's got to correct that.
Hold on. It has to be something here that just says
the illegitimate children of Stu Hart and the Fabulous Moolah deserve more respect than that.
Okay, here's another thing that doesn't say who they are. The illegitimate children. All right, one more place I'm going to check. Let's try this piece of shit. Okay, the Blackhearts. Dave Johnson was the other one.
I'm trying to remember Dave Johnson.
All right, well, what a shitty way to end this show. I'm so sorry.
Do we have music?
Unfortunately, we got some music. I shouldn't say that.
Music. Oh, wait a minute. Breaking news. Mike Richards fired as producer of Jeopardy.
Oh, really? Wow, good.
He's out.
Goodbye.
He will and Wheel of Fortune. He's out. He tried to George Goulas himself right into that hosting position. And instead, hopefully, Miam Bialik will be licking that show.
I want LeVar Burton. Give me LeVar Burton hosting.
I like Miam Bialik.
You can't even say her name.
I don't know what the fuck her name is.
Miam Bialik, is that it?
Well, your guess is as good as mine, but she was
on Blossom.
She's cute in a nerdy way.
No, well, I don't want to insult.
Do you know she's a brain surgeon?
I know she's a very smart person.
Or some kind of scientist of some description.
She played the young Bette Midler in the movie Beaches.
I can see that in her face. I don't know if she sings like Bette. She probably does better brain surgery than Bette. She sells brain pills on television, but she's a neuroscientist. And apparently, a fucking just excellent Jeopardy player.
Would you like to speak about any other 80s and 90s television stars? What's going on with Jim J. Bullock, Jim?
Well, wait a minute, who?
Jim J. Bullock.
I thought it was Jim J. Dillon.
You see that? So it's like the jokes are getting slower, but so are you and I. So it works here at the end.
We? All right.
Let's see what kind of joke we got here. Well, with that, the drive-thru is closed. Of course, we're back on the Jim Cornette Experience when it debuts this weekend. I think Saturday, but this weekend, wherever you find your favorite podcast, back next week with the drive-thru. Also, wherever you find your favorite podcast. Get access to classic episodes of the drive-thru and the experience at patreon.com/Cornette. For $5 a month, you get access to the archive going back to the beginning in 2013. Patreon.com/Cornette. The official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search for Jim Cornette. It'll come right up. almost 240,000 subscribers strong and growing every day. Be one of them to check out the clips of the episodes, the full episodes, the omnibus collections, and the very popular Travis Heckel artwork, the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. You can follow Jim on Twitter at @TheJimCornette. You can follow me on Twitter at @GreatBrianLast. You can hear me on the 605 Superpodcast at 605pod.com, available wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Get ready, ladies and gentlemen. Cornette's Collectibles at JimCornette.com. The wait is almost over. And all right, well, the crowd died down right in time for that hee-haw. Any final notes, any final words about your website?
It's gonna be a wonderful amount of fun, and if you do manage to break it, then we will live stream Hotchkiss's tarring and feathering on the YouTube channel.
Followed by us raising money for his hospital bill, but don't forget the drive-thru is brought to you by the Law Office of Stephen P. New. Remember that, Hotchkiss. 888-692-8084. Get even with Stephen at newlawoffice.com. But until this weekend on The Experience, and next week right back here on the drive-thru, for Jim Cornette, I'm the great Brian Last. Tally-ho!